Hello, world. Today my guest is Roger Reeves. Roger is a former pilot and international drug smuggler who ended up in prison for 33 years in 26 different prisons in 7 different countries spanning 4 continents. His friends and associates spanned the globe, from the Medellin cartel kingpins Jorge Ochoa and Pablo Escobar to Mr. Nice, Howard Marks, and the infamous Barry Seal, who was Roger's close friend and employee. In his early 30s, Roger was making over $1 million a day flying back and forth from Colombia, and he eventually hired Barry Seal. And on the podcast, Roger gives vivid details to their relationship up to the very end of Barry's life. Roger escaped from prison on 5 separate occasions, was shot down in both Mexico and Colombia, and tortured almost to death in a Mexican prison. It is with great honor I introduce to you the gripping tale of Roger Reeves. All right, good morning, Roger.
And good morning to you, Danny.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you traveling all the way from the West Coast.
It's my pleasure.
So, to open this up, you served 33 years in prison, 26 different countries?
No, 26 different prisons.
Oh,
in
okay.
7 countries on 4 continents.
33 years, 26 prisons, 7 countries on 4 continents.
That's right.
Wow. How did all of this happen? How did you end up here? Why don't you give people who aren't familiar with who you are, give people sort of a brief summary of your story and who you are?
All right. I was born down in St. Augustine, Florida in 1943 during the war. My folks went down there in the war to work, and I was born there. And then after the war, we moved back to Georgia on a 3-mule farm, tobacco and cotton, hard work. And I stayed on that farm for 25 years. My daddy died when I was young. He was an alcoholic. And 7 little brothers and sisters, just like doorsteps. And I went to work at 14 years old in a grocery store, paying the lunch money. It started off $3 a day, and the lunch money was $3 a day. And I got a raise the next year, and it was $4 a day. So I never did have a quarter left over. So I think it kind of made me appreciate some money. So I got out of school and finished school. I went up to Canada. I'd work in tobacco. Since we had a tobacco farm around Ontario, Canada, they had a lot of tobacco, and the Belgians were growing it. And I went up there, and I was working tobacco for $20 a day, and I went to a carnival, and I wrestled a bear in a carnival for a $500 reward that I didn't get, and the bear beat me up. So I went to the beach the next day, and there's a pretty girl on a towel, and I talked to her, and that's Mari. It's been 60 years ago.
And that's your wife now?
That's my wife, yes.
How old were you when you met her?
18.
18 years old.
Yes.
Wow. That's incredible.
So we got married a couple of years later. And so we have 3 children. And I got a job on the railroad. And I started making whiskey, and I borrowed money. And finally, she and I wound up with 36,000 chickens laying eggs. And the price of the feed kept going up, and eggs kept going down until I had to do something. So I started making moonshine whiskey. And I made 1,000 gallons a week. And I had 4 big vats, 1,800 gallons each. And those things blew up. I thought the revenuers had us. And anyhow, I had quite a run with them shooting at me in the bloodhounds and getting away from that. And we decided we might ought to leave. We were kind of ashamed to go to church, and people pointed fingers at us. But the grand jury didn't indict me. They voted 12-12. So we moved out to California, where I went to work in construction, and I was painting and working in concrete and framing and any other thing that had hard work to it. And then I got on the fire department in Redondo Beach, and I drove the back of a 108-foot hook and ladder truck for several years. And then we went up to Alaska. We went fishing, had a salmon trawler up there. And then we came back and went back to work on the fire department. I just took a year's leave of absence. And I was hauling antiques. I met a fella, and I was buying antiques around Los Angeles, like one of the first pickers. I had my truck. I'd go and get them and take them to Antique Row and sell them. Every day I'd make me $100, $200. And so this fella says, why don't you go to Missouri? There's more antiques there than you can see. I said, why is that? He said, well, back in the settlers, in the 1800s, they would come on the train to the Mississippi River. And they'd take the ferry boat across and take all their pianos and the big sideboards and the tables. And they couldn't get them in those Studebaker wagons. I didn't realize that the covered wagons was mostly Studebakers.
Scoot this thing up a little bit closer to your mouth.
All right. So we loaded up, started hauling the antiques out of Missouri back to California and putting them in auction. Mm-hmm. And I was reading a National Geographic book, and it's talking about mercury in Mexico was worth 13 times more in the United States. And I said, I should go get me a load of that stuff.
Mercury?
Mercury. Okay. Just an article in National Geographic, just something to talk about. Mm-hmm. As we bumped along 45 miles an hour with a load of antiques. And so he says, oh, that stuff is so heavy it knock a hole in the bottom of your airplane. I had a little Cessna 182 by that time.
Oh, you already had an airplane?
I had an airplane, yes.
At what point did you decide you wanted to learn how to fly and be a pilot?
Oh, when I was young. I read the book Jungle Pilot. And he's the man, Nate Saint, started Missionary Aviation Fellowship. And I read that book and my heart burned. Oh, I would just love to do that. And he started Missionary Aviation Fellowship. And so it spread all over the world. These men flying missionaries in and out, sick people in and out of the jungle. They fly medicine, and he would just drop it with a cord in a bucket to them until they could cut out a little strip for him. And I thought, boy, I would like to do that. I'm not made to be a preacher, but I could do something good like that.
Yeah.
So that was my idea to learn to fly. So I learned to fly at Douglas, Georgia.
Really?
Yes.
How long did it take you to learn, to get your license and everything?
Oh, I flew a long time before I got my license. I'm not one of them sticklers for it, but it took me about 8 hours before the instructor stepped out. I bought a Cessna 152, and I flew that thing all the way to Nome, Alaska before I got my license.
Wow.
And I had a hairy experience up there chasing wolves.
Chasing what?
Wolves. I
really?
was taking a little Instamatic camera, taking pictures of wolves, and I got right down real slow and low, and that thing stalled on me right above the wolves and just almost turned upside down right across the tundra. I think that's just one of my lives got used up.
Oh, my God.
So anyway, that's why I learned to fly, and that's when I went to flying. And so I just kept getting a little bit bigger planes until I got a Cessna 182.
Did you ever think that you could make money being like a private pilot or anything? Or
no, I just did it. I
was
working on the fire department. I had a little extra money. I had a painting crew and buying and selling antiques, and so I was into chips. I bought me a little airplane, and I think paid $7,500 for a 182. Those things are $300,000 now. If you want to buy one.
How much did you pay?
I paid $7,500 for
$7,500 for a Cessna
182.
Cessna 182.
Yes.
Wow.
And now they're over $300,000 if you want to buy a new one. Of course, mine was used at that price, but they still weren't much. Mm-hmm. So he says, won't you hold marijuana? That's the hottest thing I don't know anything about it. I've heard the kids smoking it. I said, what would he pay? And he said, I think they would pay $10,000 for a trip down there. I said, I'm all for it. I said, what would they do if they catch you? He said, nothing. Probation. He said, that thing's almost legal out here in California. So he introduced me to a fellow, said, you got an airplane? You'd fly down there? I said, yeah, I'm going down there fishing all the time anyway. They don't ever bother me.
Where were you going fishing?
In Mexico.
Were you really?
Yeah, I'd fly down there on some of my days off, Maury and I, and take the children down there, the baby, and so we just had a nice life there. We weren't far from Mexico and in Southern California.
Right.
So I went down there and did a load. And, man, I come back and they give me $10,000 in a paper bag. That was 2 years' pay on the fire department. Take home. And I shook it on the bed, and Maury put her hand up over her mouth and said, oh, my, I don't believe it. And the baby grabbed the $100 bills and crawling around, and we just laughed. We didn't owe any money. We didn't do nothing. So we went out to dinner and then put it in a lockbox.
So what was that like the first time you actually flew down to Mexico to to pick up marijuana. I mean,
it was just picturesque. It really was.
What kind of people did you meet with, and was it what you expected? Was it shady at all?
Not at all. I went to a place called Jalapa, Veracruz. It's the capital of the state of Veracruz. It's up in the mountains. And it was like Bible times. The people had like stone basins in the street, and they were scrubbing their clothes, the women were. And I went to church, a Catholic church, and I walked around, and there was the Stations of the Cross. I'd never seen those carved, all the Stations of the Cross in a Catholic church. I understand now that they have to protect them because they're such valuable art pieces. And I was impressed with that. And then I went out early in the morning to the airport to load the marijuana, and I had my fireman's badge in my wallet, and so the old guard on duty, he was kind of suspicious of it, and I showed him my fireman's badge, and he was all helpful.
Really?
So then I taxied down to the end of the runway, and they met me with a van and put the stuff in, and I was coming back across and didn't have enough fuel. I knew I wouldn't. I'd have to land somewhere, so I landed at a little abandoned strip with a little stone house at the end of it, and the man that owned the marijuana got in with me. So I put him out there, and there was a little boy herding goats, and his name was Lazarus. So we put the marijuana in a stone house, and I flew into, I forgot, one of the cities of Mexico, and refueled and came back out and sat there and had lunch with the little boy, then paid it back in there and flew on home.
Were you worried? Were you nervous at all?
Not a bit.
And you were flying, and you flew down there alone?
Yes, But the man that owned the marijuana flew back with me.
Okay.
So we didn't have any trouble a bit.
And then at what point did he pay you? When you landed back in the U.S.?
Yes, they came the next day and paid. And then the next load, they cheated me out of it. That was all they had, so the second load, they didn't have to pay me.
Really?
Yeah. So I took it, I found him, and I sent a detective after him. We found him in New York, and I went up there and stuck a gun in his ribs and took him down to the wharf.
What?
And he was so nervous, he couldn't even light a cigarette. He thought I was going to kill him. Of course, I won't hurt him at all, but I was going to scare him into paying him my money. So I took his dog.
Wow.
And his dog was named Leslie, a beautiful, long-haired setter. And he was so upset about taking his dog. He said, take my wife, take my wife. I said, no, that's illegal. I'll take your dog. So I dog napped, and I kept the dog, and the children put bows in her hair.
Because this guy didn't pay you for the second trip.
Right. So anyhow, he never did pay me. So he caused so much heat till our friend out there said, give him his dog back, Roger. You're going to bring us all down.
So how did you find it? You hired a private investigator to like hunt him down or something?
He went up to a cabin where Bill, this guy's name was Bill, and where he lived, and in the fireplace was some burnt papers, and he looked at it, and there was where the dog was shipped to Vancouver, Canada, and from there transshipped back to New York.
Oh,
so
my God.
he copied the numbers and all down before he touched it, and it's disintegrated, and he found out the address where Bill was.
Wow.
He wasn't really a private detective, but he was better than private detective. He was the guy that first introduced me to these people.
Oh, he was the guy who introduced you.
Right.
Okay,
And
wow.
we went riding across country.
Right. So then what happened? Did you have an itch to keep doing this stuff, or?
Oh yeah, without that. Well, this is just easy. I went to see a
And
lawyer.
you had absolutely zero fear of being caught or getting in any kind of trouble.
No, well, of course I flew just at the treetop level. Sagebrush would sometimes be in my wheel wells, and I was afraid of hitting a power line at night or something more so than I was of getting caught.
What was the reason for flying so low?
Keep off a radar. They had radar on the hills around there, and so they were trying to catch people. They catch pilots every once in a while.
Oh, okay. What year was this?
1973.
73. Wow.
So I went to the lawyer, and I said, lawyer, what'll happen if I get caught with a load of marijuana bringing in? He says, you work on the fire department? I said, yeah. And he said, yeah, you ever been convicted? I said, never had a traffic ticket in my life. No, never a moving violation. He said, you'll get probation. At the most, you get a year and serve 4 months raking leaves on a military base. Oh, I kind of like that story. So I went and bought me a bigger airplane, a Cessna 207. That thing would carry 1,100 pounds, and I could make $40,000 in a day.
How much was that plane?
$35,000.
Cessna 207.
Right.
Wow.
It's a stretch 206, but it's the same engine. Just it's nice, 150 mile an hour, carries 1,100 pounds and go 1,000 miles. So great big old tires. So I started hauling. So I bought me a new Cadillac. I didn't know about all this, about making people look at you. And I had my mother and my baby sister come out from Georgia, and I took them to Disneyland in my new Cadillac. And Mother said, "What are you doing, boy?" I said, "I'm hauling pot, Ma." She says, "How much you making?" I said, "I'm making $40,000 any day I want to go down there." He said, "What do they do if they catch you?" So I told her about what the lawyer said, about 4 months at the most. I said, "What do you think, Ma?" She said, "Do you need a co-pilot, son?"
Wow.
My mother was a sport.
That's amazing. So did you ever bring a co-pilot with you, or did you always fly
No, I
solo?
always flew alone, yeah.
Okay. And at this point, you're how old?
30.
30 years old, flying down to Mexico every day, making $40,000.
Yeah, we got where to do about once a week, and then you had 6 months or something. There was no pot,
Okay.
so you had to work while it was
Are you
going.
still dealing with the guy who you had to hunt down and steal his dog?
I just got in touch with him a few weeks ago. He got in touch with me on Facebook.
I mean, at this point, when you're routinely flying to Mexico and back, are you still dealing with the same guy? Or?
No, we separated a little bit ways.
Okay.
Yeah, but no hard feelings. I think he just didn't want to get very involved in it.
Mm-hmm. So you found somebody else you could do business with?
No, I didn't have anybody. I just did it myself.
So what did you do? You just flew down to the same location and said, "Hey, who's got pot?"
Oh, he had it. This guy Joaquin is there's a little river come there just north of Mazatlan in the state of Sinaloa, and it came through a cliff in the rivers and had like a waterfall. And then there was a poor village called Pichilingui. Starving donkeys, looked like starving people. And on the bend of the river in the sand was a 900-foot runway, if you could call it a runway, rutted.
Yeah.
It's real short, but the Cessna 207 would make it so. But it wouldn't take off with a load. So this young
Because
fellow,
the runway was too short,
Too
the plane's
short,
too
yeah.
heavy, you need longer.
You're right. So I would take enough fuel down with me, and Mari and I would go to the grocery store and get little goodies and apples and toys for the children. And I'd pass out the boxes of those, and they just loved them. So every day more and more children were showing up at that runway. They had heard of the American Santa Claus that was coming.
The American Santa Claus.
So yeah, so I hauled many loads out of there. And one time I did it 13 days in a row. I hauled a load every day. And so on day 13, I had that little thing in my stomach. I have a warning. We all do. Like, watch out, don't do it. So I asked this guy, Joaquin. He's a hair-lip guy, just an ugly man. I said, "Joaquin, are you sure this place?" "Yes, I'm paying the federales off. No problem.
This is the same routine you're taking every day.
Yeah.
You're used to it 13 times, and on the final day.
Yeah, well, it wasn't no final. I was on a roll. They had marijuana stacked up by tons.
Okay.
So I'm just hauling all I can haul out of there.
Right.
But this guy, Pedro, would get in the plane with me, and Joaquin would tell him where he was going to block a highway. Sometime it'd be 20, 30, 40 miles away. And Pedro would get in the plane with me. He was light, and we'd take off and go over, and there would be a 2-ton truck blocking the highway with a rifles or machine gun on it, and about a mile down the road would be another one blocking the highway. So I was on a major freeway.
Well, why did they block the highway?
That was my runway.
Holy shit.
So no cars could come. And so I'd land, they'd put 1,100 pounds in that plane, and like a bucket brigade off the truck. I'd shake hands with all the Mexicans with their sombreros, and I'd get back in the plane, take off over the next flood without turning around.
Oh my God.
So every day we did it in a different place on different highways. So on day 13, I had the bad feeling all night long. It was just like, ooh, I have that. I just have a gift of it. It was just like, oh my. And the next morning I went down and brushed my teeth just at daylight. And 10 or 12 men walked down with me. And I got in the airplane, Pedro got in, and I fired it up, and it went pow. I thought a tire busted. I looked over leisurely. Did I have a busted tire? And Pedro's yelling, "Policia, policia, policia." And I'm not at the end of the strip. I'm up part way, about halfway, so I only got about 400 or 500 feet in front of me. I usually just go there and taxi back down and turn around. So I just put power right to the firewall, cold engine and all, and just went tearing off down the end of that strip. And when I got to the end of it, I was doing about 40, 50 miles an hour, and I rotated. And when I did, there was 4 of them, 2 on each side, and they just shredded that airplane with machine guns. There was 80 bullet holes in there, and they shot me down. And all the windows was shot out. I was shot across the top of my head, my knee, and my toe was shot off, the nail off. And
what were they shooting you from?
From both sides of the runway, from the ground.
From the ground.
You see, I just run between them. And right as I went to lift off,
they were spraying.
They just riddled it. It looked like one of them Bonnie and Clyde cars. So I went into shock, I reckon, because the world just turned yellow. And time slowed down. And the gasoline was just pouring in on me where the bullets had gone up into the tanks above my head. And windshields was out. And a bullet had hit the strut right in front of me. And pieces of splinters of it was all in my face and my chest. And I just saw ahead of me in the river, the cliff was coming quick. And it looked like in the river, it was only knee deep or less, was stones, and they was big as this table. It looked like great turtles just at daylight was in there. And I thought, I'll crash on top of those and maybe I can live in the water. So I just pulled the power, and I didn't have no control over the yoke whatsoever, over the elevators. And it went straight in, and when it did on the first hit, the wings came off, and the second hit, the nose came and went underneath the airplane. And I'm sitting there, I guess I was knocked unconscious from the jolt, and Pedro was shaking my, come on, Roger, come on, Roger, come on, Roger. And I just stepped out over the nose of the plane right into the water of the river. And those federales was coming, and they were still shooting it. So a couple of them hit the plane, and there was a pistol in there. Later on, I used to carry a pistol to start with, and I found it was more trouble than it was worth. But anyhow, that morning I had one, and a 9mm Browning, and I just reached and pulled it out of its holster because now the radio where it was taped to is upside down, so it's just right there. And I popped a few caps at those guys, and they ran in the rocks. And so we took off, and then I saw that Pedro's foot was nearly shot off. It was just, and it wasn't bleeding all that bad. It was just like white. And so I took my T-shirt off and tied it. We went on up the mountain, and there was an old donkey, looked like she was 30 years old, way back, and he knew her, Charlotte, Charlotte, and he read her. And we jumped on that donkey without a bridle or saddle, and we rode, I understand now, it was 7 miles. And we came to a little house in a clearing, and there was a small man, and he was plowing, and he had a little horse hooked to a little cow, and the two of them with a wooden yoke across their back was pulling a little plow amongst some stumps, and he was trying to make a living out of a burned place. Like the natives do that sometimes. And we went in his house, and his wife and his daughter put some cloth on my wounds and poured diesel all over it to keep the flies off.
Diesel fuel?
Diesel fuel, yes.
Wow.
And so he took off, and he was gone all day. And late that afternoon, a bunch of horses and mules come trotting up into the yard, and there was a doctor there, Dr. Benjamin Sosa, a Red Cross doctor, and he gave us a shot of morphine and tetanus shots, and he tried to find the bullet. I still have one in my foot. And he looked for it, and he said we had to get to hospital, and that Pedro would die if he didn't get to hospital. They had killed one person on the ground there that tried to run away that morning. So they took us to a road. We rode a long way on them mules, and we got to a truck. It was a 2-ton 10-wheeler loaded with corn in the ear. So they dug holes on one side for me and holes on the other side for him, and buried us down in that corn and covered us up. And they kept a little place for my face, but that was a real rough road. And every time that truck would roll one side or the other, the corn would roll in on me, and they'd laugh and take it back off my face. And we went through 3 roadblocks, and they said they had a platoon of soldiers and over 100 of them looking for an American shot down, believed dead. And so we got to the highway after some miles, and went into a house and had a white pan, and they just kept changing it with water. I think I changed it 20 times before I got the blood and all the crud off of me from that episode. And they got a taxi, and they got a new taxi to take me to Guadalajara because they said the roads all north was blocked. So the man was a little dwarf of a man, and I love this story. I was high on them morphine pills and the shot that I had, and I laid back on a big blanket, and that little fella talked all night long. I said, Senor, do you have a family? Oh, yes, I have a beautiful wife, Dora, and 3 sons. Let me tell you how I got my beautiful wife, Dora. Says, I live with my mother, my widowed mother, and you can see no girl would look at me, but I had my eye on Dora across the way. And so one day she's playing the flute in the back of a band that's coming by, and I open the gate and pull her into the yard. My mother helped me get her in the house. And she sits in a chair, and she sits there stiff all night. And I tell her I love her and I want to marry her, but she won't even look at me. And so, Senor, the next morning, we have to let her go. What could I do? So she went home, and just at daylight, she knocked on her door. And her hard-hearted father says, "Get away from here, you prostitute. You spend the night with some man. You're not my daughter anymore. Go away." So she hung her head down and walked away. And that's when I went up and told her, "Dora, let's talk to the padre." And Senor, that's how I got my beautiful wife, Dora. And said, you won't believe it, but 1 year later, we had a beautiful boy. And I was driving a Ford taxi, and I was new, so we named him Ford. And Senor, the next year we had another boy. And that year I'm driving a Dodge, so we called him Dodge. And Senor, I know you won't believe this, but the 3rd year we have another beautiful boy. And at that time I'm driving Chevrolet, and the priest will not christen him Chevrolet. So I had to teach that son of a gun to drive before he would christen him Chevrolet. And Senor, that's how I got my 3 boys, Ford, Dodge, and Chevrolet.
That's incredible. Wow.
Just stories, one after the other. In my book, I have, I believe, 41 chapters, and many of them are just like 2 pages or 10 pages long.
So, on that last story you told, where you got shot down by the federales, and you got shot in the toe,
and the knee, and in the top of the foot, and across the top of the head,
and the top of the head. After you went and got all fixed up, and you were getting transported with the corn, and where did you eventually end up after all that?
I went to Guadalajara and got on an airplane and flew back to Los Angeles.
Okay.
And Mari took me to Wilmington, where I got medical care in a hospital there.
Okay. How old were you at that point? Was that your first time actually being shot at?
No, the revenuers had shot at me back in Georgia before.
The who?
The federal revenuers back in Georgia when I was making whiskey. They shot at me. 8 of them emptied their bullets their pistols at me.
In your plane?
No, I was on the ground running from a liquor steal.
Holy shit.
Yeah, they mean to kill you. They don't care. If they got a badge and a gun and you don't do what they say, they'll just kill you.
Right.
It's like, all right, we got a license to kill him.
But it was your first time actually in the when you got into the transporting business, flying drugs back and forth. It was the first time that you encountered any kind of resistance.
Yes.
And so after you get back home to L.A. and you're with Mari, you get fixed up at the hospital, and I'm sure your wife's trying to convince you to stop doing this, right?
Not particularly. I was pretty cool about it. We went to Hawaii, and I had to put my foot up on a crutch, so I had to keep it higher in my head for a month or two. That thing throbbed. And so the children would bring me pina coladas at the hotel in Hawaii, and then we went to...
How bad did your foot get messed up in that shot?
Not bad. It just took the toenail off of the top of the big toe, and one slug got into the foot and went right back at the joint, a part of a bullet.
Mm. Okay.
So I wasn't hurt bad. I mean, to be nicked, you could have been killed just as easy.
And one scraped right across the top of your head?
My head. Yeah, I got a scar right across where it went across the top of my head there.
Wow.
And so then we went to Dubrovnik, Yugoslavia, and we rented a little Volkswagen thing. My foot was stuck out the window, so it was above my head in a military boot, all tied up. And I had my Chevy Regal between me on ice, and Mari's driving, and she's going fast in that little Volkswagen convertible, and he's almost on 2 wheels going down towards Albania. And the Russian troops come out, or the Eastern Bloc troops halt. So they explained that we passed a certain path up the way 10 kilometers, and we got here too fast, so you're speeding. And it's going to cost you 500 dinars. And Mari's laughing, trying to take their pictures. And I said, 500 dinars? You have to take her to jail. Well, she straightened up right quick over there. And so then I paid, it was $5, it was 100 to 1.
Oh, okay.
And went on down the road. So that's
not
what we
bad.
did. And then I came back and I bought a twin Beach that belonged to the Beach Boys. It was a famous plane. And I started
Twin engine what?
a twin engine Beechcraft.
Okay.
They call twin Beaches or Beach 18s.
Okay.
And I bought 12 of those in my life.
Is that one of those seaplanes that lands in the water?
No, it's
Okay.
just a big. It's like a. Oh, it's a big twin engine plane with radial engines, great big round engines on front of it with like motorcycle air cooled
okay.
engines. So they were wonderful planes.
Is that the biggest plane that you had owned so far?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I felt like I was really, really into big times. Maury was in Atlanta, and I bought it in. I bought the plane in Wisconsin. So I flew down to Atlanta to pick her up. And they were saying, I remember the day, November 797 Juliet Foxtrot. Keep your speed up 180. 747 over to your right on runway such and such. And
Wow.
I thought, boy, I'm in here. And I landed in taxiway and
You're
came
flying
up.
with the big dogs.
How bad now? I just kind of had a smile on my face. And so I taxied a long way and went up to Hangar 1, and they rolled out the red carpet, and Maury walked out there, and he's come out with a Surrey and got in the plane, and we flew away. So that was a step up, like I should have been flying a 747 from a.
Wow. That's incredible. So what happens next?
Well, I flew that thing every year, and I'd tear them up. One bogged down, another one I hit the end of a ditch in the night, landing, knocked a runway.
So you immediately start taking that new big plane to keep doing more shipments.
Now I'm making what was I making, about $80,000 a trip.
Okay, going to the same spot.
No, we go different places.
Okay.
But I even went to Colombia and Panama and Jamaica. I like the one in Jamaica. I had the firemen down there would load me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'd get at night and after midnight or something, and I would taxi the taxi was almost 2 miles long there at Kingston, and I'd go to the end of it and I'd say Kingston Tower, whatever my number was. I have a cabin fire light up, and boy, all of a sudden the fire trucks would come out of the station and come down. They'd throw a ton of pot right in there, the firemen would.
Wow.
We got it fixed now. Thank you, Kingston Tower. And I'd take off.
Wow, that's awful creative.
I think they was all in on it, but it covered everybody.
So you weren't always landing on highways, strips of highway?
No. That was the only time I did it to that spot.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes I landed at military bases, all kind of stuff.
Right.
Yes.
So you continue doing this day in, day out, making $80,000 a day, no problems, no.
Oh, I'll probably, during the season, I'd probably go every 2 weeks because I'd wait on my money, and it wasn't just automatic.
Right.
Yeah.
So how long does this last before?
10 years.
This lasts for 10 years
Yeah.
with no hiccups.
Oh, I had lots of hiccups. I wrote a whole book of them.
I mean, how long does this last before
Before the police got on to me, before I was arrested?
before something else happened? Not like necessarily before you're arrested, but like the story of. I remember there's a story where you're flying and you have to make a landing and your tires get stuck in the mud, and then you end up getting stranded out in the jungle.
That's one of my favorite stories. Let me tell that story.
How did that happen? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends.
It's been brought to my attention that a lot of people like to hate on their ads. But guess what? They got a lot of money, they got a cool-ass game, and I don't see y'all paying for this state-of-the-art podcast studio. Shadow Legends has millions of players and dozens of sick-ass characters. When I first opened up this game, I was truly stunned by the graphics and the artistry. And they've just introduced an entirely new playable faction called Shadowkin. As you can see, the Shadowkin are heavily inspired by the mythos of medieval Japan, along with a load of Eastern Asian influences. They got ninjas, samurai, and a whole host of mythical badasses. They've only just arrived, so get ready to meet new members as they arrive in-game. I would highly recommend Yoshi the Drunkard. Raid's just passed their 2-year anniversary, and this month, they're releasing a new batch of epic and legendary champions, which look pretty amazing. They're also releasing their second version of the Doom Tower, but also two brutal-looking bosses, the Celestial Griffin and the Eternal Dragon. If you want to get a huge head start in Raid, all you gotta do is hit the link below, and you'll get a free Epic Champion Jotun, 100k silver, 50 gems, and 3 ancient shards. All this treasure will be waiting for you here. These rewards will only be available for the next 30 days and only for new players. So hit the link below, and I'll see you in the game, brother.
I went down
And was this, and what plane was, I mean, I'm sure, how many planes did you go through over this
25 different planes.
25 different planes.
Yes, that I can remember.
And out of the 25 planes, like, what happened to most of the planes? Were they crashed, or were they shot at?
Most of them I'd sell and buy something different.
Okay.
So just move them around. But I guess I must have tore up, I think, 4 that I tore completely up.
4.
Yeah, and one of the pilots had tore up another one for me, so it's 5 I can think of.
When you say tore up, what do you mean by that? You just crashed them?
Just crashed them, yeah.
Wow.
Finished.
Okay.
Oh, one of them was bogged down in the sand at the end of the runway, and here comes the helicopters. You run off and leave it, so you
just abandoned the plane.
You have to. You ain't nothing else to do.
Jesus. Okay, so where were we? We're talking about the story where your plane, you tried to land it in
I had bought a beautiful, beautiful DC-3, I mean museum piece. I believe Union Oil had owned it, and it was lovely. The pieces where you in front of the seat let down with exotic wood carved in different colors for the countries. I hated to take that interior out, but I did. And I went down to Colombia, and I had to wait on a strip for time to go because I was over in the guerrilla country. And while I was waiting, I went over and I went to sleep under a tree. There was 4 of us. I had a co-pilot and the man that was hooking me up to it, and he had some other fellow supposed to be nowhere to go. And I was in a hammock asleep after lunch, and I was under a tree, and I just heard a terrible roar, and I woke up, rolled out of that hammock, and I looked up into the ass end of 2 military jets going straight up with afterburners glowing. And then they turned around just like they would on an air show, and they come up the airstrip and just tore it up with 50 caliber bullets. And I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I jumped out of that and I ran for the airplane. And I just give the guy $80,000, and he took off in the truck the other way. I should have went with him. But anyhow, I was thinking about getting out of there. So I got in the plane, and I took off, and the co-pilot got in with me. And the 2 fellows, and we had about 10 or 12 barrels of gasoline in the back in the baggage area, or where the seats used to be, in the cabin. And there's 55-gallon drums of aviation fuel. So I took off, and the 2 jets got right beside me, and the pilots were so close, almost like you and I, and they kept telling me to go to Villa Vicencia military base.
How were they telling you, on the radio? Or?
No, they was pointing towards it. They didn't.
You could see them that close.
Right. Oh yeah, we were just. They had their wingtips over my wingtips.
Jeez.
They just want me to go to the military base. They was pointing at it, and I just put up the old hippie sign and shook my hand at them. I didn't think they would shoot me, so they just kept swarming on me, and I kept slowing that DC-3 down until they were just standing on their tails, burning all kind of fuel, black smoke coming out of their tails.
Oh, those planes aren't meant to go that slow.
No, so. And anyhow, they kind of went under me and started shooting them 20-millimeter cannons. Boom, 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 boom. Just shake the airplane. So I pushed the nose over so they couldn't get under me. I'd fly treetop level. And later on they said that I tried to crash into one of them, but I really didn't. I didn't know it. So later on they come and they shot holes in the tail with 50 caliber just with a sweep zip. Just put a few in. And oh boy, that got my attention. And then they shot up the left wingtip, and I said, "Oh my!" And there was a one of them left, I guess, for fuel. So there was a black rolling clouds ahead. Mm-hmm. Well, wait. First off,
thunderstorm.
First off, I couldn't get my wheels up. I didn't take on a DC-3. They have pins that you stick in the struts, so that if the hydraulic collapses, the plane won't go down all the way on the ground.
Okay.
So it's just like a strut goes up and down. And I'd left those pins in. I got in to go so fast.
Oh, okay.
So there was a big pasture up ahead, so I landed, and it was rougher than it looked, and the fuel caps popped off all over the place. And So on the World Series baseball game, it interrupted this baseball game to tell you that American DC-3 has just been shot down by Colombian jets. This is the first plane that's been shot down on Reagan's new war on drugs. And then in a minute it says, he's up and away. We'll keep you posted. I took off again.
This was in the middle of the World Series that you were getting
Series
chased by
baseball.
these Colombian fighter jets?
Yes, we have copies of that transmission. Yeah.
There's actually like a recording of it
Yes.
during the World Series?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
So
That would be a cool thing to find if you can.
I would. I think I got my friend Jerry's got a copy of that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we went on, and then I went into took off, and I went into these boiling clouds, and the clouds stick close to the mountains in the tropics, and those mountains go up 20,000 feet there in that part of Colombia in the Andes, and I was afraid to go in much further, so I went on up to about 20,000 feet, and I started getting some ice, so I came back out again, and there was that jet right there, boom, boom,
That's
boom.
your plane?
That's it.
Wow. Was it all metal like that too? All like shiny metal, like one of those Airstream vans?
Yes, that one was, but that one. The one I
That thing
had,
is
mine
beautiful.
Was the blue and white one. So, where was I? Oh yeah. So, I mean, boom, boom, boom. He shooting at me again.
The pins are in the struts. You forgot.
I got
the
them
fuel
out
caps
now, and
popped
I took off
off.
again with no fuel caps on top.
You crash landed.
No, I just landed on a pasture, just a big cow pasture.
Okay.
Those things got huge tires, big as a semi truck, so they
Okay.
land stuff like that.
Okay.
Now it was rough. I mean, it was up and down, and I got out and took those pins out and took off again.
Holy shit.
So, but I was afraid that he was going to hit one of them tracers, shoot through the fuselage, and hit
Right.
that fuel. I'd just be or hit the gas tanks. I'd just go up in a ball of flames. So yeah, I was serious about it. So when I went back in, I thought, okay, I can't get away, and the plane was icing up real bad at that altitude. So I just kicked it over into a spin right down to about 2,000 feet, and I just came out under it. It was just beautiful down on the.
So, okay, explain that again for people who aren't familiar with flying and
All right.
aviation. So, you took off again from the cow pasture.
Yes.
And you flew up to how high? 20,000 feet?
20,000, I suppose, about that. Yes.
And that plane wasn't made to fly that high.
Well, to go that high, but
You need
it'll ice-
oxygen.
Yeah, but you can stand. You're not supposed to go 15,000 feet without oxygen, but
Right.
you can stand for a while without it. For sure, you can.
Right.
You lose your. You get fuzzy.
Okay. And so, what was the reason that you purposely stalled the airplane vertically?
Oh, to get away from that, to get away from the jet. I was going to leave him up there, so I just stalled it. And when you stall one, you put it up into a stall and let it fall over on one wing, and then it's like a falling leaf. It'll just spiral, and it'll spiral, and it's just almost go down as fast as if you dropped it. I mean,
Wow.
It really goes fast. It's like it's falling on one wing.
Is this something that you had done before? Like, this
yeah.
seems like a crazy maneuver to try.
No, people learn to do that.
So you learned this when you're.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of people learn to spin.
And the reason that you stalled the airplane was to get off of his radar, or
just to get away from him. Let's do some maneuver real quick.
just so like out of nowhere you stop and then drop, and then
That's
he would
right.
lose you. Okay.
Well, I didn't know that he would, but he did.
Right.
So I got away from him, and now I feel bulletproof. All right.
Your adrenaline's pumping.
I'm going to go get that load of marijuana. It's 3 tons waiting on us down there, but we can't go back to the guerrillas because they done run us off.
Right.
We got to wait till about dark to get there.
Right.
So I'm flying along the Guaviare River. It's way on down in Colombia, closer to Brazil. And
This is on the same flight.
yeah,
This is right after.
That's where I was supposed to go to start with. But
Okay.
we waiting at that other farm
Right.
until we could go in the evening to the guerrillas.
Right.
So I see a long grassy strip. It looked like it's 20 feet above the river, and I said, I got to find a spot where we won't have enough fuel to fly all afternoon and then fly home.
Mm-hmm.
And so on this grass, I guess it was about waist deep, and I just touched the wheels down lightly, and I made a half a mile strip, and the wheels are 18 inches wide, I guess. And the first row, it looked good, and the second row, it looked bigger, and the third row, and I went 4 or 5 times and put a little more weight on the tires each time, and it was hard as a rock. And so I told
So you kept circling and going down and touching down
and going
you were making your own runway.
right. So
Wow.
So I did it, and
Where did you learn how to do this? Is this something that you learned? Like
no, but on the farm and a tractor, you do all kinds of stuff to get there. It didn't, it would look like it was smooth. But what I didn't know And so I had the co-pilot named Al. And so when we was almost coming to a stop, I said, "Get your feet off that brakes, Al." I don't have my feet on the brakes. And what has happened, that thing weighs 30 tons. And on those 2 tires, they were breaking through the crust. It was like, I guess about 8 inches deep of real hard clay-like. And beneath that was soup where the water had stayed. So the wheels went through, and it just started slowly doing a handstand until it went right straight up. And the nose and all just came in slowly on us, and we fell in between the seats to save our lives.
Because it was collapsing on you.
The nose was just, and the plane was coming up on its tail, just like this here, just like that. And it stopped right straight up and down, 90 degrees. You couldn't have put a ruler on it any straight. And the 2 big engines, you see those big engines, they held it up.
Yeah.
And so I just undid the emergency hatch and stepped out in the grass. And Al came behind me, and we reached in and got our suitcases. Now, the 2 guys back up in the fuselage, they got kind of banged up with all them drum cases. And it's 100 feet, not 100 feet, but it's high up there to that door. I mean, high. So they tie a couple of fuel hoses, and they shimmy down, and we set out walking.
Unbelievable, man.
And that's when they went down the road, and I went through the jungle.
So you're in the middle of nowhere in Colombia.
Yeah, and I said, "Listen, I'll eat snakes in this jungle for a year before I go down the road." After the Jets had done what they did and what we did. And so I went through the jungle, and after 11 days, I came to a place. I kept asking the Indians, "Donde está aviones? Where are airplanes?" Loma Linda, where is it? Lejos, it's far. And I kept going.
Where are airplanes?
Where can I find an airplane?
Okay.
In Spanish, "Donde está aviones?" So I was speaking to the Indians, and I eat brown sugar and drink the water. And I had a St. Paul bag from the cleaner plastic, and I bought a block of brown sugar, and I'd put that water in it, and I'd get along pretty good on that.
Huh. Just brown sugar and water.
Brown sugar and water for some days when I didn't have anything to eat. So I finally came to a place, and wow, what is this place? It looked like Hawaii, World War II. Green roofs, a pasture, a nice long runway, several airplanes, a tower. Mm-hmm. And I knocked on the door. I said, "What is this place? How did you get here? My name is Katie Sue," that a lovely voice. He said, "I'm touring." She said, "We don't get tourists here." So, what is this place? "You don't know? This is Loma Linda, headquarters for Missionary Aviation Fellowship for the Amazon." So God just tapped me on the shoulder. The same people that I had learned to fly, these are the people that I went to their place.
Wow.
And one of their pilots, with an old missionary from Canada, flew me out the next morning, and we flew to the same military base where they tried to get me to go. And a policeman reached in and got my bag out of the airplane and put it in a taxi.
Wow.
And the other fellows went on to prison for some years down in Colombia.
They went to prison.
Oh yeah, and I knew they were going. For sure, I knew they were going. I said, "Come with me, please."
Wow. And that was the part where I remember in the book there's a specific part where you guys are in a Jeep. Yes. And you're riding through the jungle, and you see there's a checkpoint, and they all went through the checkpoint. They thought they could pay them off. Yeah. And you got out of the Jeep and you walked the other way.
We went some ways to start with that first day or the second day. We got a Jeep to take us. Mm-hmm. And so we went, I don't know, 20, 30 miles. And
so was it at that checkpoint where yeah,
I'm sure it was. I never talked to him. So yeah, I saw one of the guys in prison. Mm-hmm. He got real mad with me, trying to beat me up.
Really?
Because I'd left him down there. I said, "You fool."
So at what point in your life, there's a chapter about the creation of the Medellin cartel?
Yes.
Now, was that the party that you went to?
Yes.
Out the airstrip that was supposedly all of the drug gangs around Colombia coming together and forming the cartel?
What had happened was, the way I understand it was there was 10,000 people killed down in Colombia, killing each other. The price of cocaine was $10,000 a kilo in Colombia at that time. It's $50,000 in the United States. And one fellow would have 10 or 20 kilos, and he'd give it to another person to take to say, "I got a pilot," or "I got a way to get it there." And they would look in the paper, and, "Oh, in New Jersey, I see 40 kilos was busted." "Oh, I'm so sorry, senors, yours was busted." Bang, bang, bang. Of course, he was being ripped off, and he knew it, so he was killing them.
Right.
So the Ochoa brothers and Pablo Escobar and a guy named Gaucho and the Mexican, several other ones, they got together and says, all right, we will form a, they didn't call it a cartel, they just like an insurance. If we will send it to to Miami for you for $10,000 a kilo. If it gets busted anywhere between here and your man in Miami, we will replace it in Colombia. So you can't lose. But it's going to cost you $10,000.
$10,000 just to get it to Miami safely.
That's right. So they got inundated with 100 tons of cocaine.
So they were like an insured transportation company.
Exactly. And I'm their pilot. All right, there at the beginning of it, I was there.
So you were there at that party,
I was there at that party.
Purpose of creating this alliance.
Well, I don't know that was the purpose of it. They reached some kind of agreement at that time.
But you had no idea when you were going there.
No, I didn't know. I was just down there trying to get some work.
Did you meet any of these guys? Any of these like big time?
Oh yeah, I met all of them.
You met Escobar was there?
No, I didn't see Escobar at that party, but I saw a lot of the other ones down there. And I got a job.
The Ochoa brothers?
No, they weren't there either, but they were behind it.
Okay.
They was police chiefs. They was stand-up comedians. They was actresses. They was all kind of the people that
These were all lower level.
I don't know. They're pretty big. There's one guy that I did the first load. He had got caught with a ton of cocaine in Colombia, and 16 judges were murdered, and he was rather nervous.
Wow.
And I did a load for him, and I didn't like it. The man I gave it to got shot in the stomach. It took a while to get paid, and I just said, I don't want to fool with those. So then, okay. All right,
so what?
Okay, let me just tell you. I'll tell you how it happened.
Okay.
So I back up and tell you a little bit. I had sold an airplane to a woman from Bolivia, Sonia de Attila. She was like a black widow. I understand she had a lot of people killed, and I sold her an airplane, and she wanted me to fly base from Colombia and up, but I didn't deal with her. But through this, I met a man named Jaime Carrillo. Brilliant man, kind of like Churchill. Beautiful apartment overlooking Medellin at 20 floors up. And he was a drunk, but he had cocaine and lots of it. He had a lovely wife. They were older people. And he says, yes, I'll pay $5,000 a kilo. I can get you all you want. So in sachets this woman from Bolivia, and she kisses him on both cheeks, and she has rabbit fur coats and boots. And so I have this lawyer with me that's introducing me to Roberto Davila from Bogota. And she says she's going to the United States to buy a plane. So he winks at me, and he said, Roger over here's got some planes for sale. And so she looked, yes. Yes. And so he's doing his fingers like this. So I tell her, yes, I have a Queen Air. Oh, Queen Air. She likes the name Queen Air for her. Anyway, I have the plane broke down, and I have to go to Colombia to get to Bolivia to take her in her entourage to get my money. And this is a gruesome story. Anyway, we land there.
So is the Queen Air the plane that you guys fly there?
Okay. I had several Queen Airs.
So you take her there to get the money so she could pay you for it.
So it's just an interest story. So we land, and they just bow to her, the police and all, and they get limousines with flags on it from Bolivia, and we get in the cars, and we go through town, and we go out to the water tank, and there's a marble house that looks like a mausoleum with a razor wire fence all around it.
Wow.
Like it's a prison within itself.
Jeez.
And they open the gate, and the helpers are all crying and red-eyed, and what's the matter with you people? She's just really nasty. Your lion ate the baby. What do you mean, leaving a baby on the floor in front of a lion? She had a cougar in the house. So I went in behind her, and there's that cougar with blood on his mouth, and diaper and shit and blood all in the room.
What?
Yes.
Oh, my.
And she hugs the lion and runs all the people off. You idiots, I never want to see your stupid faces again. And the lion just ate the maid's baby.
The maid's baby.
The maid's baby, yeah.
Holy
little child in the house.
shit.
So I got my money and got on out
Are
of there.
you fucking kidding me?
And James Clavell wrote the book Deep Cover, and he also wrote the Big White Lie, the CIA and the crack cocaine epidemic. And it's got a couple of, I got a couple of mentions in it. One of them says that I was in more DEA files than Noriega. And
Who wrote the book?
James Clavell,
James Clavell.
the same one that wrote Deep Cover. He was a
Okay.
DEA high up, and the CIA tried to kill him for exposing them about the crack cocaine.
Okay.
So he wrote The Big White Lie, the CIA and the crack cocaine epidemic. They developed it and put it in every city in the United States on one weekend. So,
The CIA.
yes,
What's the story behind that?
I don't know. They just wanted to sell their stuff, I suppose.
Wow.
I mean,
So he said that you were on more DEA reports than Noriega.
yes, and then he's asking her if she can find me, and says, we've been looking at him for 5 years. He's on the 10 most wanted list, and if you can tell us of anywhere to find Roger Reeves, we'll give you anything you want. That's in the book, The Big White Lie.
Wow. So you sold this lady your plane, and then this fucking lion eats a baby, and then so at this point, at what point do you become aware that America is looking for you?
Oh, they weren't
The
looking.
DEA or the CIA?
This was years later that
Okay.
this happened. Okay, so I hauled.
And how much money are you making at this point after you sold her your plane?
I'm not making much money at all. I
Okay.
mean, I'm in fact losing some. I'm losing a pretty good bunch of airplanes and different reasons. I'm not doing very well during those few years there.
Okay.
About the early '80s, it was kind of a dry time. Mexico had got so hot, and I'd been shot up down there and tortured in a Mexican prison till I didn't want to go to Mexico anymore.
Well, when did this happen? You were tortured in a Mexican prison?
I was tortured almost to death. Would you let me tell you about that?
I'd like you to tell me about that. Yeah, please, Roger. Oh, and is this before or after?
This is
the
before.
Medellin cartel was formed.
Oh, before.
Before,
This
okay.
is why I didn't go back to Mexico anymore. The couple of episodes happened down there that was not healthy.
Okay. Yeah, please tell me about that story.
Anyhow, I was arrested in Mexico, and by 7 agents, and I won't get into that long story where I knocked one in the head and got away from all of them with the bullets flying, and got away. But I had a pilot coming down, an older gentleman, and he landed at Hermosillo at the international airport, and he was supposed to land 5 miles beyond at a cattle ranch, a feedlot. And he just, I don't know why he did it. But anyhow, he had my phony name and my room number in his pocket. And he had $5,000 in the federal. Tried to take it from him, and he wrestled with him. No, Roger said, give it to so-and-so. So anyhow, they arrested me and put me in prison down in Mazatlan. And they done a number on him up in Hermosillo, and he told. So they want me to confess. So I just can't believe it. I haven't done anything. I'm just in a swimming pool, and I'm in my swimming shorts, and I get handcuffed in the pool when the guy shakes hands with me.
Where, at like a house or something?
No,
or-
in a real nice hotel.
A real nice hotel, okay.
So they take me to the prison, and I sit there, and I mean, it was miserable, and it was so hot. And after about 3 days in that cell, just where all the drug addicts and drunks are thrown, they take me back there to the torture chamber, and they decide I'm going to tell. And they hold my head under gaseous water until I can't stand it any longer. And then you just fight like crazy to come up. I mean, it burns you daylight.
They held your head underwater?
Yeah, it's like a tub, and it's got some kind of bubbly. If you inhale it, it will make you nearly explode your head.
Okay.
If it goes up your nose. After one time of that, it'd take 4 of them to hold you down.
Wow.
So anyhow, I had that, and then I was beaten all over till I was just yellow and black.
What were they asking you? Were they trying to get anything out? Or were they just
sign the papers and it'll all be over? Sign it and it'll be over. They'd grab your hair and shove it up. Sign the papers. So
What were the papers for?
just to confess that you were a marijuana smuggler and that
Okay.
you're going to get 6 years in prison.
Okay.
And I thought, well, if you don't sign it, I knew they can keep you 2 years for
Right.
nothing.
Right.
But so they give the the room was about 5 foot square and 14 feet high, and it was hot. And there was a little spot on the door about that big. And they brought a man in. He's a black man, and he was wrapped in he was frozen, and he was wrapped in newspaper about inch strips around just like you'd wrap something, like a mummy, and you're completely frozen. And they stuck the ice hook in his rib. He must have been used over and over again, and they hung him on the wall. And as he thawed out, his eyes, the water run down his face, and it looked like he was crying. And then, of course, the formaldehyde ran out of his orifices, other ones too. And the old paper come running off of him, and later on you could see his liver where it's pulled apart. And they'd open the door, "You next, son of a bitch, you next." And so anyway, that didn't scare me so bad. I'd butchered large animals all my life, but the smell was awful with that formaldehyde puddling on the floor. And the floor was...
It didn't bother you that much?
Well, as far as liver and a dead man, it just, that didn't scare me. It was just
Okay.
like, all right. I didn't like it, but it was no more than if you'd had a whatever.
Yeah.
So I had to sleep, and that floor was filthy and on the wall with dried blood that was just one of the room that they hurt people in. They kill you back there. So I went to sleep, and I put my head down on the bottom of that door to breathe like that, and I'm breathing the fresh air from that side, but I'm getting the formaldehyde over close to me, and I went to sleep. And I know where Walt Disney got some of his cartoons from. I had pink flying pigs and horses and all kind of colorful animals flying around in that state of mind from breathing the formaldehyde. I was high on something.
Really?
And so then when I woke up and I saw that dead man hanging there, it took a minute to figure out which was a nightmare and which was real. I had to kind of pinch myself to see where the
Right.
reality was.
Right.
And then they took me out and they bent me over naked and buttered my bum and packed it full of hot chili, ground chili. And I'm talking about screaming and talking ugly. I did some of it. And I looked at their faces. If I can find you, I will kill you if I can get out of here.
Oh, my God.
And then, so just one day, after that, they put me back in general population for a few days.
And you didn't sign anything, obviously.
Of course, I didn't sign it. I would have died for it. Signed up for 6 years for nothing. They just didn't
Right.
do it. So back there, I got a word out and to Mari and to some other people. And then one morning, they just said, come quick. And they took me out the back door of the prison. And they put me in a pickup truck, brand new, and it had a horse's head on the door. And they sped through the streets of Mazatlan, and they went to a bank. And I went in, the banker spoke English, and he said, "Listen, Joaquin, that's where I got shot down that morning, and that's the load I went back after, has given Roberto the $17,000 that you paid for the loan, and he has paid it to get you out of this prison. Are you satisfied with that?" Don't ask, man. So I went to the hotel where Mari was, and we got on the 747, and I didn't believe I was out of there. I looked terrible.
How many days were you there?
About 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And so I got out of that place, and when the tires of that 727 was a brand new plane, I just couldn't believe they're not going to come get me again. I was and the wheels went up, kaplump, next stop, Los Angeles. I was like, wow, that was on the 4th of July, 1974.
After that, I gotta say, man, I would have been like ready to call it quits.
I didn't want to go back to Mexico anymore. That's one reason I kind of quit. I had another encounter that was bad there too. So after several of those encounters, okay, I decided to go to Colombia.
Colombia, they don't treat you as bad if you go to prison there.
They were more professional.
More professional.
You didn't go to prison. You just had professional people loading you and had good gasoline, and
Okay.
we
They had a better operation going.
They were. These other people were peasants that some of them maybe couldn't even read and write. It had something going.
Oh man. So, at what point did you meet Barry Seal?
I'd been flying cocaine, and Mari and I decided we'd look for a place. I believe it was in Honduras. So we flew down.
Look for a place to live.
A ranch, a place, kind of a hideaway, a beautiful place in the mountains, so we could sort of have a place. And I had all this money.
You were going to purchase a ranch.
A ranch.
Okay.
So we flew down to Honduras, and we did go to a beautiful place, and but we decided not to buy it. It was just too remote, but it was just beautiful. So we came back to San Pedro Sula, And our clothes is all muddy and dirty from a week up there on that ranch and fooling around by Lake Azul. And so we took them to the cleaners, and he said, I'll have them ready tomorrow afternoon. Of course, they weren't ready. Well, okay, first thing tomorrow morning. So Mari had the children with her, with us. We had the 3 children. And I said, well, you go into the airport because it's easier for me to get out to New Orleans on just one of us. If all of us miss, it's going to be hard to get out. So she went on to the airport, and I went after the clothes. Of course, they were slow getting. I got on an old taxi, and I had a wad of them in plastic bags. And I give the guy $100 and to go faster, and he just blew the horn more. Oh, he didn't go. So I got there, and the plane's taxiing out on the tarmac.
Mm-hmm.
And so I run, and I got the clothes on my back, and I waved to the pilot, nice-looking fella, and he waves back. Then I see Mari's face in the cockpit.
Yeah.
And then I see the nose wheel go down, and he stops, and he laughs, and he lets the stairwell out for me.
Yep.
And then he pulls it back and takes off again a little bit like a hitchhiker going to stop, not going to pick you up.
Mm-hmm.
So he had some fun. So finally he put it out, and I go on with that load of clothes, and the whole 180 passengers are clapping for me when I get on.
That's so funny.
So I go down, and I sit down, and my daughter's sitting in the middle, and she saved me a seat about halfway down on the airplane. And I sit there, and we take off, and the wheels come up. I guess she's about 9 years old. And then they're going up about 5,000 feet. It went clunk. And she said, what was that, Daddy? I said, he just turned his autopilot on. Oh. So a fellow leaned over. I done looked at me. Had nice, clear blue eyes. He just looked too sharp. I said, he's DEA or FBI, CIA or something.
Really?
That big fella sitting there. He looked like Rex Tillerson.
Where did you guys take off from again?
San Pedro Sula, Honduras.
San Pedro Sula. Okay.
It's over on the Caribbean side.
Okay.
Death capital of the world for some years.
The what?
The death capital, the
Murder capital?
Murder capital of the world for a good number of years late, just some years back. But at that time, it was laid back and wonderful, but a nice halfway stop coming up. So when I said that, he leaned over and said, you fly these things? I said, I got a few hours, mister. My name's Barry Seal. How you doing? And so then he got to talking to me, and we talked to airplanes and so forth. He said, I just got out of prison this morning in Honduras. I got caught down here. I didn't believe him one bit. And he said that he had been a Trans World Airline captain, and that he was, I don't believe he told me he was ex-CIA, but
Commercial?
yeah, he flew 747s. I believe he was the youngest 747 pilot that the TWA ever had. And he took a load of explosives down to the Cuban Contras and got caught with a DC-6 loaded with 10 tons of explosives, and he lost his job with TWA.
Wow.
So then he's working, doing whatever he can, like this freelance, and he got in trouble. Mm-hmm. So I didn't believe him a bit, but we chatted about airplanes all the way on to New Orleans.
He straight up just told you this on the airplane.
I just got out of prison this morning, you know.
Flying explosives to the Contras?
That was before. I believe he got caught with 100 kilos in a little Piper.
Okay.
Down there, and he served a year.
Okay.
I didn't believe it a bit. I thought he was just trying to pull me out. So when we landed in New Orleans, I shook hands with him, a nice fellow, and got out there, and here's 20 or 30 people, women and children hanging on him, crying, begging, hugging his neck, and I thought, that guy's telling the truth. Ain't no way he could stage that.
Wow.
So I went over to him and had Mari to write our name and address and the phone number on it. And I said, Barry, I might have some work for you if you're interested. Come out to see me in Santa Barbara. All right, I'll do it. So a week or two later, he comes out, and I had
Didn't learn his lesson, huh?
well, he was ready to make some money.
Oh, yeah.
So I said, I'm hauling cocaine out of Colombia, and would you be interested? Oh, yeah, well, let's see what you can do with flying. I didn't know what kind of pilot people, all kind of pilots. Say people get the license, still can't fly. I don't know. So I had
What was your biggest concern with him when he came out to meet you in Santa Barbara and you were talking to, and you were talking about hiring him? What were you worried? Were you worried about anything like obviously his flying skills, or like did you have any sort of suspicion that he could have been CIA or undercover or anything? Or
not after that, not after seeing his families, and I found out he was already in prison and all that sort of stuff. It just they don't do that. I was comfortable with him.
Okay.
I really liked Barry. He was my friend. He's hit it off with some people. All right, we were just like
you guys got along great.
We got along good. Really, I liked him. And so I had a 690 Aero Turbojet Aero Commander. That thing was nearly new.
What's it called again?
Aero Commander, a 690. That's
6690
690B.
B Aero Commander.
Yeah, and it had little jet engines that turned propellers. That thing was fast. It'd go to 300-something miles an hour, and it'd go right on up there, right with the jets for a while. Anyhow, he got in that thing, and I said, show me what you got. And he said, sure enough? I said, yeah. And it wasn't but a little while. I said, you don't have to show me no more. He was like Bob Hoover. He just did he was aerobatic like the Blue
Really?
Angels. Oh, yeah. I fly all right. But that guy was like the Blue Angels. I mean, it was just like, like a God. And then he cut the engine and he just let it fly sideways to sideways till it hits the ground. And the only person I've ever seen that is in the air show with Bob Hoover, the world champion. So he was that good. He was good. He had 1,000 parachute jumps. And in that movie they made about America made about him, it was so wrong. He was such a gentleman. They had him coming out of whorehouses and women hanging all over him. And that was just, I never heard him say damn. He didn't smoke, he didn't drink, he didn't do drugs. He was a businessman. He was a pilot and a gentleman.
So after you were so impressed with his acrobatics and his flying skills, then what'd you do?
I said, Barry, this plane needs tanking. Do you know somebody? He said, yep.
Needs what?
Need tanking. It won't go the range.
Oh.
It needs tanks in it. So he said, yeah, I got a mechanic in Mena, Arkansas that keeps his mouth shut. And so I gave him $10,000 and he flew away in my new airplane. A few days later, he called and said, come to my house. I went to his house and it was all tanked up.
Wow.
And that's when I told him, I've been stopping at, I'll hire you to fly and I'll give you $2,000 a kilo. I was getting 5. And so he was happy with it. And I said, but now we don't need this plane tanked. Well, first off, we did a few loads, and he would fly down and meet me in Belize at a ranch I had near Orange Walk, and we would change the load over. But then it got dangerous. I figured, we got $15, $20 million worth of cocaine changing planes here, and I would go into Jamaica because I didn't mind flying that southern end, but I was scared to cross the U.S. border. Well, not scared, but I'd rather not, if I can hire it done. So, but then I told him, we can refuel in the military base in Nicaragua. Well, he just couldn't believe it. So that's the only time I really ever impressed him. I said, yeah, you can come out of Bolivia, out of Colombia, anywhere. And at that military base, no words, just come right in. They'll fuel you up, give you a steak and eggs, and polish your airplane, you'll be on your way.
Really?
Yeah. So Barry flew. And I mean, he would fly, but he wouldn't fly another until I paid him. So he did 500 kilos at the load, and so it was $1 million he made. And
$1 million for one flight.
Right. And he hired this guy, Emil Kemp. I had to give the $20,000 for him to go down, get Emil out of the Honduranian jail. And Emil wasn't much of a pilot. Oh, he could fly, but he wasn't. He just get him around.
Right.
So the two of them flew together. They were great big fellas. I said, goodness gracious. Two of y'all, you can put 400 kilos in you where y'all sit. But anyway, he wouldn't fly without it. So you might like this little story. He would moan and groan until I paid him. Well, I didn't get paid until they got paid. And so I had a pipeline coming. And sometimes they'd owe me $6 or $7 million. It'd take 3 or 4 weeks for them to get money, and then I'd get what they did. So I was paying him before I got paid. So I was like, a loss. I'm back.
Right, you're fronting that money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he wanted.
So you were paying Barry. How much would you pay him on one trip?
$2,000 a kilo. I paid $1 million a trip.
So you'd give Barry $1 million cash.
Yes.
He would fly where?
He would fly. He would fly out of wherever he wanted to, up in Arkansas or Louisiana, and he would come over to a little radio station.
But like, where would he go? Where would he fly? Like, he'd fly to Colombia.
Yeah, but but we didn't know where we were going a lot of the times.
Oh.
We would come over El Banco. It's at the forks of the Magdalena River there in behind Barranquilla, and there's a radio station. I believe it's still 7:20 a.m. on your dial. And we come at 10,000 feet, circle, and pretty soon there'd be a plane. You'd see it. It might be already there. It'd be like usually a Cessna 180. And he'd be circling, and you'd get right behind him, and you'd wiggle your wings, and you might go 100, 200 miles, and you'd land in the jungle.
Oh, and they would tell you where to land.
They wouldn't say a word. We didn't speak. We just followed that
You just
other
followed
airplane.
the plane.
Or followed him where we were going.
And there was a signal they would do with the wings.
Well, we just knew it was him. It just, yeah.
Okay.
And so followed that plane. Did that sometimes. Sometimes we'd go to the same place, but if there was a new place, we'd follow that plane.
Okay.
So that was pretty neat. And then he come back, stop at Nicaragua, refuel, and come all the way on. He went to Mena. And this is what.
So he had the $1 million in cash.
Yeah, I'd give him $1 million every
And
week.
what would he do with that million once he landed there?
I don't know.
So that was just his. That wasn't for his cost to buy the cocaine or anything.
No, I got paid $5,000 a kilo. So I got paid $2.5 million, and I gave him $1 million.
Okay, but
So
wouldn't they have to give him all of the cash though?
No, they didn't give him anything.
Okay.
All right, he would land in Mena, Arkansas.
Okay.
And then he would put it in 3 different cars.
Okay.
And every day I had a fella buying me 6 cars a week, great big ones.
So he was okay. That was where I was confused. None of the transaction revenue is going through the pilot at all. The pilot is just the delivery person.
He's a truck driver.
Okay, got it.
So, but anyway, he had the drivers. I didn't even want to meet his drivers. That's how I was afraid to meet people.
Right.
They get caught, they're going to tell on you,
Exactly.
which they all did. So
Exactly.
I had somebody buying cars, and they buy these LTDs or the Ford or Mercury Marquis, and they had big trunks. We put air shocks on them, tires that wouldn't go flat, new hoses, boom, boom. And then I gave those to the Colombians, and they would be a trunk full of cocaine in duffel bags. They'd have rattlesnakes on it. Some of them would have cow horns. That meant this one went to this one, that one went to that one.
Oh wow.
So I had to just point the cars out to my friend Lito and give him the key. Bam. And I never want to see that car again. I said, it's going to your safe house. I don't want it back.
Right.
And it's $5,000 to you, buddy. And I said, well, you can take it to New York, Canada, where you want to. It's as good as you can do. So they liked it after a while.
Wow.
So anyway, one time, Barry was belly aching a little bit about me being slow on pace. So I was in the store, and I saw these Stay Free mini pads. A pretty package.
Stay Free mini pads?
Tampax.
Oh. Tampons.
Tampons, yeah. Australia tampon. And so I got $1 million and put it in a box, and I put those tampons on top of it, Stay Free, and wrapped that thing up and put a bow on it.
That's great.
Barry loved it. He made a place on his mantelpiece for the Stay Frees.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is absolutely amazing. So how long did your and Barry's relationship last?
About 2 years.
2 years.
A year and a half, 2 years.
And when did it go south? What happened when it went south?
Well, I got arrested in August 1982.
Okay.
And so that was the end of it.
And then he was still...
And then he went straight out, full on working, and he bought the planes from me. He gave Mari the money for all of them and what was owed and all that. He took care of it 100%, but he cut me out of the deal. He ought to give me a little percentage after that, but he didn't.
Right. So how did you end up getting arrested?
Oh, I just flew down the load. I had $15 million in a jet, and I chartered it out of San Antonio, and I flew down to...
what kind of a jet? Just like a private jet?
Falcon, okay. I believe it was.
Okay.
And there was 2 pilots, and I was laying on top of the money, and I took it to the bank and put it in the bank. And the pilot said they wanted to stay for the weekend. Oh, man, it's holiday, da-da-da-da. I said, all right, I'll catch a jet back to Miami.
Okay.
And so when I landed in Miami, I was arrested. And they charged me with all kind of stuff, but marijuana, all marijuana stuff.
All marijuana. They didn't get you any cocaine charges?
Nothing. They didn't know anything about it. So I did 2 years, and I got out. And by that time, I found Barry had been working with him, and he'd been working with Oliver North, and he'd been paying off.
How did you find out he'd been an informant and working with these guys?
I had heard it already,
okay.
And so I was scared of him. So
when you were in prison?
So, but I will just tell you now, Barry had it paid off. Whenever I wanted to land in Louisiana, I had a sheriff there in a place that could for $10,000. Or I landed on Interstate 10. They was building. It was beautiful. I followed that thing all the way across Texas, landing on it as they was building Interstate 10. The best runway you could ever find.
Wow.
Put a truck there and turn the light on. That's it. 10-mile-long runway.
Jeez.
And we'd go out there the next morning and rub the black marks off where I'd landed.
Oh my goodness! So after you got out, did you try to reach back out to him, or you were done with him? You didn't even try. You wanted nothing to do with him?
It wasn't that. I couldn't think that Barry. I didn't know what the deal was. So I was I was having breakfast, and there was Ronald Reagan's blue eyes right there on television. We said, we have absolute proof that the communist Sandinista government is in the cocaine running business. And there was that old fat lady, the C-126, on the runway in Nicaragua, bellied in, and oh shit.
The lady you sold the plane to?
No, that was the one that Barry owned.
Oh.
He bought that after me, but
Okay.
I knew what he was doing, and I knew that they was into it. So, but Barry, I'm going to back up. Now, he wouldn't land anywhere else. He says, I got paid off to the governor. I got paid off as high as you can get, but it's going to cost you $50,000 every time my wheels touch the ground in Mena, Arkansas. So every time he landed, I had to pay $50,000.
Wait. What?
Yeah.
Well, what part of the story is this? You're backing up now. You're backing up, but this is before you got
No, I'm talking about Barry wanting to land at Mena, Arkansas instead of Louisiana. When I started flying with him, he said, I will not land anywhere else except Mena. I got it paid off. I cannot be arrested. I cannot get caught in Mena, Arkansas.
Okay, so he claimed he had some sort of a deal in Mena, Arkansas, where he wouldn't get caught. He was protected.
Exactly. So later on, we know that it was the CIA, and they were shipping guns back down with him. But he also said he was having dinner with the governor. So Mr. Clinton was not far away. He was a strong man of the governor in his home in Mena. And the movie that Tom Cruise made was written and played out as Mena, the name of the movie. And the Democratic Party got so hard behind them until they couldn't come out with a movie until after the election with Hillary Clinton because it shed bad light.
Wow.
And so the director quit. And that movie was changed all around and changed into America Made and a very poor movie.
Right.
But so they was hitting too close to home.
So what what kind of details did he tell you about Mena, Arkansas, and his sort of like cloak of invisibility?
He just said, listen, it's going to cost you $50,000 every time my planes hit touchdown. I cannot get caught. Listen, plain out, I cannot get caught in Mena, Arkansas. It's 100% protected.
Immunity.
He said from the highest to the right on out. And then a time or two, he said, I'm having dinner with the governor tonight. Now, I don't know where he was or not, but that was what
he mentioned to you casually. I'm having dinner
tonight with the governor.
Wow.
So, and then later on, we know that the CIA was putting some small arms on his planes to take back to the Contra so they could load it up with cocaine. Can you imagine what they thought they was going to do with a Piper full of AK-47s in a war? That was just a front.
What do you mean it was a front?
The CIA, some outlaw CIA agents, are saying, okay, we're going to supply the war. Congress won't supply the arms that we need to fight the communists in Nicaragua. So we're going to have Barry, and he's going to take these guns down for us in his Piper.
Right.
It's like a BB gun.
It wasn't enough guns to really make a difference on anything.
Nothing, absolutely. But we're going to bring tons of cocaine back to pay for them.
Oh, my gosh. So what, I mean, I'm not super familiar with the story, but what were they doing? So if Barry was bringing back tons of cocaine to Arkansas, who was buying it?
They were spreading it all over. They were putting it into that crack cocaine business, I suppose. So anyway, they had to hammer down. Yeah.
Now, so you're saying that actual like politicians and stuff and CIA officials were purchasing this cocaine and spreading it out and selling it to people?
They were having it. They were buying it in Colombia, shipping it up by Barry, and of course they were distributing it. Oh, they had their people distributing it. That's what the whole story's about. There's no secret. This is what I'm telling you is just real.
Wow. And you kept in touch with Barry. So after you got out of prison, did you keep in touch with Barry at all?
No, I didn't keep in touch with him. Mari did somewhat.
Because Mari sold planes to him after you got.
He just came and brought her the money for the planes and says, Mari, this is straight. So I didn't think too much about it anymore. I was all right. So when I got out of prison, I was out just a short while, and some days. And when I saw Ronald Reagan's blue eyes on the television saying that the communist Sandinista government was in the cocaine business, and my guts turned to ice water, I said, oh, Barry has done it. So then it was later on that afternoon, I got a call from him. He said, I'm coming out tonight, Roger. I'll meet you at this little French restaurant in town. I didn't even know it was there. So I'll be there at 9 o'clock.
Where was this?
In for Santa Barbara.
Okay.
So I came in the door at 9 o'clock, and he was leaning at the back of the thing, and he had gained weight, and he was leaning back. And I walked up to him. I said, are you wired, Barry? And he said, no, I'm not. I said, well, I'm not going to say anything. Just tell me. So he just started talking. And I looked around, and I says, DEA agents? He said, every one of them. There's about 20 people in the room, blue jeans, ladies with leather skirts and all on. And so the room was full of DEA agents, and I'm on this hot seat. So he started telling me, and he just said, Roger, they wrapped me up, and they left me holding the bag. I couldn't do anything but testify. I couldn't do 3 life sentences. And he put his hands up over his eyes, and the tears ran down between his fingers. He said, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. He said, so I've gone to Congress.
Shit.
He said, I went to see Edwin Meese. I was Attorney General at the time. So I flew my jet up there, and I knocked on the door and told him that they was bringing tons of cocaine out of Colombia. And he wouldn't believe me. He kicked me out. And the next day I went back, and I said, I can prove to you that they're doing it. So get the guy, Jake Jacobson. He put him with him. He was a DEA agent.
Mm-hmm.
And we went down and did 1.5 tons, and I bellied a plane in at Nicaragua, took 1,000 pictures, and I testified before Congress, and I've told them all your part, but you're under my umbrella. As long as you testify with me, exactly what I say, and we use my lawyer, you can have your passport, have your money, you can live anywhere in the world you want to. I said, Barry, they're going to kill you, friend. Oh, no. Ochoa brothers, this and the other. He's in Spain, the other one dead, and this and that and the other. And so the DEA agent came over, and he sat down, and we had Chivas Regal and ice, and we had a nice time. I liked him. He's I think a crop duster from Alabama. We'd have been on the same team. I'd have been all right. I really did like the man.
Yeah.
And he just said, listen, you can come to Miami tomorrow in chains, or you can come first class with Mari. It doesn't matter to me. But you're going to testify before a federal grand jury. And if you do, you can keep your money, your passport. You can live anywhere in the world you want to live. But if you don't, the only place you're going to ever see your family again is in a federal prison visiting room. And he said, and you got to have your pilot from Santa Barbara. You got to give him up. Barry knew that I was flying at another airline going. Same as him, did more than he did.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't know who. Colombians told him. I didn't ever tell him.
Right.
They trying to give a little competition, I think. So my guts turned to ice water, and I went to see my friend Jerry, I'll say his name. And me and him been friends 50 years, and there wasn't no way I could tell on him. Just couldn't do it. I mean, I was just sick. So I went and told him, I said, Jerry, I don't know what they're going to do, but they can cut my tongue out. I won't tell on you. It's not going to do it. So I thought, well, I better go down to Miami and see what I can do. So I went into a fancy lawyer's office, and he was on the treadmill, and he got off, and I talked a little bit, and he said, well, being a snitch is like being pregnant. You either are or you're not.
It's an interesting way to put it.
No. It ain't that, man. I've got to say something. I'm in a mess. He said, well, if you say something, you got to tell them everything.
Mm-hmm.
You leave anything out there, use everything you did, you're going to get several life sentences. Now, whoa. I went to see another lawyer, and he was just kinder, but he said the same thing. You fool with them, you've got to tell them everything. If you leave anything out.
If you work with them, you got to go the whole way.
All the way. You got to tell them it's all or nothing. So I couldn't do it, not even on my life. So I went to La Festival restaurant that night. It was on my birthday, January the 26th, 1985. And Barry knew I liked that restaurant. It was a lovely restaurant, no name on the door.
In Miami?
Yeah, in Coral Gables. So I went in there, and him and his wife came in. Debbie, she was looking real pretty, and Barry was, and we had dessert together, and I just told him, Barry, I just can't do it. I said, they're going to kill you, friend. He said, oh, no, da. I hugged his neck. And
Who were you telling him was going to kill him?
The Colombians are going to kill
Colombian.
him. Certainly they're going to kill him. Of course they're going to kill him.
If he testifies against all
you're just going to die, man. You ain't got no choice.
Right.
And you can go now, but
These guys are ruthless. Doesn't matter where you are, they'll find you, right?
It's almost anybody you tell like that. And most of these people kill you. You're destroying their lives and their families and children and all that sort of stuff. And you did it, and you did it with your eyes wide open, and you made a deal. You just can't tell. So most people don't live by that honor, and so a lot of them get killed. And so anyhow, I hugged his neck. I may have kissed him. And anyhow, Mari and I and the children fled to Brazil. And
the next day or what?
Oh, yeah, right away. I think we went back to the house and got some things, and we were gone. And so we living in Brazil, and I got word I was up in somewhere in Brazil, and I was calling the Colombian. They owed me a bunch of money. They owed me $3.5 million. So I was trying to collect some of that, and as long as Barry was alive and this thing was going, they was going to pay me. But when Barry died, oh, have good news, good news. They killed Barry Seal last night, or yesterday or sometime. And I cried, and I told Mari, and the daughter cried. So anyway.
How long after this? How long after you moved to Colombia did they tell you this?
6 months.
6 months after you moved to I'm sorry, after you moved to Brazil.
I think that it was January of 26 of 1985 that I was with Barry. Yes.
At the restaurant?
And then I think he was killed July of 86, just thereabout. About 6 months later, he was killed.
Wow.
So now they have no case against me. So he was the only thing they had against me. And on the first load that I flew.
How did he die? Do you know exactly how he died? I mean, I know there's the story. What is like the official story of how he died?
Well, of course, he was assassinated by a guy. There's still three of them still alive and doing life in Louisiana prison.
The guys like
Ronaldo was a trigger man. I know him quite well. I'll tell you a little story about Ronaldo. On the first load I did for somebody, I don't know where it was. I think it was this guy Jaime. This guy's just is a hit man, an ugly fella. Anyhow, I landed at a banana plantation there somewhere in the jungle, and had a turboprop, and it was small wheels, a large wheel well, and he put 300 kilos of cocaine in there. And this guy got in with me with a MAC-10 shot pistol, and he's to make sure I go to Louisiana. I could have went to Argentina. He wouldn't know which way it was. So anyway, we took off, and the wheels, it was muddy, and the wheel wells filled up with mud, and the gear wouldn't come up. So here I am doing 200 miles an hour instead of 300. I'm not going to get home 2,500 miles. I'm just not going to make it. So in Belize, where I used to land and refuel the old prop planes with marijuana, was a really nice fellow, Mr. Carter there. For $10,000, I could stop and refuel. So I told this fellow, we got to stop. No, Louisiana. And he put the gun right to my head, the MAC-10. I said, well, shoot me, fool. You're going to die too, So I wasn't worried about him shooting me. So we landed at this cattle farm in Belize, and he was terrible beside himself. He didn't even know where he was. But anyway, Mr. Carter sent a boy out to wash the plane, clean the wheel wells out. And we went in and had chicken and potato stew, and he was all happy with it. And we flew on up to Louisiana.
Wow.
And that's when he met Barry. So he's the guy that actually shot and killed Barry.
Okay.
So his name was Ronaldo.
Wow. Now, what's the story with how Bush was involved with Barry?
I don't know anything about that. Barry has two pictures of George and Jeb Bush walking away from his plane in Opa-locka Airport, where they just bought 2 kilos of cocaine. That's all what he said.
That's what Barry said?
And they got a package. And
wow.
he snapped their picture as they going away from the plane. So I don't know, and I think that's been on the internet some too.
Is it possible that isn't it true that the American government or the CIA or whoever it was, the DEA, made it extremely easy for the Colombians to kill him and to find him?
To Barry?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think that they was, well, I tell you, I don't know who did it, but
do you think that they wanted him dead? Do you think the U.S. government wanted him dead, the DEA? And
not particularly. I think that the police in Louisiana wanted him dead. The DEA in that area, right where they've been chasing him, he just say, you guys ain't got sense enough to catch me, or I'm not doing anything today. He'll be burning that government gas up. He just bait him a little bit.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they wanted to go and take his picture, make sure he was dead. But I don't think that he did anything to make people really hate him that bad. But anyway, he was flaunting it in front of them.
Right.
And the judge is the one now. Who influenced the judge? The judge killed him because he has already testified against all these Colombians, and the judge gives him 6 months in a halfway house. Every night at 6 o'clock, he's got to come in. So the judge set him up.
So that's his death sentence.
That death sentence, 100%. And they
Because he's attached to that fucking halfway house, and they're definitely going to find him there.
he got to go every night at 6 o'clock. And the DEA stood up in court and said, Your Honor, this is a death sentence. They will kill him. He said he should have thought of that before he did this.
Wow.
And he said, well, he going to have bodyguards. No, a guy in prison can't have bodyguards. He can't have arms. He can't have nothing. He got to drive right up into that halfway house every night at 6 o'clock. And they was waiting on him, just riddled him. You can see the pictures on the internet. They said he put his hands over his ears. He shot him like 50 times in the car when he came up. It was sad.
How did you feel? Where were you? What were you doing? Do you remember the moment when they came to tell you, oh, we got great news, Barry
I called
Seal?
Mario in Colombia, and that's when he told me, oh, great news, they killed Barry Seal, you know. Well, I cried. I went and told Mario and Miriam, they cried. He was our friend.
Right.
Even though he testified, he put me in there, he did the best he could. The CIA had left him holding the bag. 100% they set him up. And whenever all that Oliver North stuff come about, arms for cocaine and the Iran-Contra deal, they just split. Everything was in his name. Everything he was the one. What's he going to do?
Right.
His own people. See, he was a CIA man. Did you know that? Barry was with the CIA
Prior to all this.
prior to the airlines.
Right.
And he had over 1,000 parachute jumps, and he was George Bush's real good friend. The old man. He was his protege. And when he died, George Bush's personal phone number was in his wallet. And the lawyer called, and he said, hey, Barry, how you doing, old buddy? And they said, they just killed Barry last night. And a click.
And he hung right up.
And right up, yeah.
Jesus Christ, man.
Wow.
What a fucking story.
I'm glad to be out. I thought one time I'd never get out of prison.
So when you got the phone call about Barry, where were you? In Brazil?
Yeah, I was in Brazil.
And what was your next move after all this? What were you thinking? Where were you in your life at this point? What did you want to do next? Like, what did you have any sort of plans from you guys wanted just like to stay in Brazil and just lay low there for the rest of your life? Or?
Well, me and Murray had different plans.
Okay.
I kind of like Brazil. I not like it, but it was opportunity for me to go into the interior and grow soybeans. I'm a farmer, and I mean the land was $6 an acre, and it was just like easy to clean. All you got, you don't no fertilizer, nothing, just plant the seeds and
Right.
grow it. Need combines. So I took Mari out to see her 30,000 hectares is 75,000 acres, and she just cried and said, Roger, if I die in this godforsaken country, please don't leave my bones here. So I just felt sorry if it didn't matter to me when I had a lot of money and just go where I wanted to. So.
And was all your money in cash, or did you keep it in bank accounts, or you obviously you had tens of millions of dollars, right?
Yes, but I invested it with crooks.
With crooks.
Everybody just about's a crook if you give them your money.
Yeah, that's
It just don't come back. I don't know what.
That's the way it works, no matter what business you're in,
exactly.
isn't it?
Just you let somebody else hold your money, and it's gone.
Yeah.
So I invested with a lot of people in huge real estate deals. Mm-hmm. And one thing I did buy, I bought the world's most expensive coin. It's called a Brasher de Bloom.
Really?
Yeah, I paid $350,000 for it. And Mari needs some money, so she sold it for $750,000, and the guy turned around the next day and sold it for $1.4 million, and it's worth $10 million now.
What?
It was
a
made
coin?
A coin.
How do you say it?
Brasher de Bloom.
Brasher de Bloom. I'd love to get a picture of this on the screen. That would be.
A de Bloom is the pieces of 8. You've heard of those?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's an eighth of a de Bloom.
Is this it right here?
Oh, yeah, that's it right there. There you go. There's 5 of them. I had the unique one. There they are. I don't know that that's it. That don't look like it. No, I haven't seen it. It's got a wheelbarrow on one side and Look up Brasher de Bloom.
Yep, that's what he typed in.
Okay, well, that's what it would be then.
So that thing is worth over $10 million now.
Today, yes.
And you paid $300,000 for it.
350 to be exact. And a little story to go with that. It was in, I can't pronounce it, but the Nacoin newspaper, Ni Numistic, a paper. And the Bank of Miami read about it. So they went to Sam, the corn dealer, and it says mystery buyers buys most expensive corn on earth. You know.
Really?
So that was just one thing that brought a little light to me. So they said, we will give you a $1 million insurance policy against it if you will loan it for us to put in our bank. So they built a pedestal in the Bank of Miami, all marble down there, and they put that coin in it with lights on it. And they give me the insurance policy, Sam did. So if anything happened to it,
You gave $1 million.
well, I had that in a lockbox in Grand Cayman Island, and guess what? It was on the judge's desk.
Oh my God.
Oh, they was unmerciful.
Did you have bank accounts set up in Cayman Islands?
Oh yeah,
Really?
yeah, and that money got stolen too. The guys out in Bakersfield living large.
Who?
The banker, he took the money out of the bank and just closed the bank down. And now he lives. When I got arrested, now he's out in Bakersfield. And if I even say boo to him, I'll go to prison for extortion or something.
Wow. So after he finds out you go to prison, he just says, fuck it, I'm taking his money.
He just shut the bank down and took my money.
Oh my God. That is wild. That is just wild.
His name is Stephen. What's his name, Marty? McTaggart.
You guys remember his name.
I called him.
How much money did he steal from you?
Oh, I'm not saying that.
You don't want to say.
Oh, $3.5 million at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Good Lord. So Mari doesn't want to be in Brazil anymore. But you guys are still in Brazil, you guys.
So we went
own all
down
that land.
we went all the way to the tip of Argentina, right down to the right to the bottom of it, almost to the straits in Ushuaia, and then we visited Argentina and looked at all the glaciers and the ranches and things, and we just couldn't find it. So we got first class tickets to Amsterdam, Mari, where she's from, and her eye was just sparkling. She got on that plane with the Dutch people and speaking her language, and we went to Holland, and then lived in France for a year, and then we went down to Mallorca, Spain.
Ooh, Mallorca. That's a hot spot.
Where I met Mr. Howard Marks, the author of Mr.
Mallorca's the big island, right?
Yes, it's not very big, but it's an island.
It's
It's
like you can
famous.
take a ferry there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so I met Howard Marks, the infamous Howard Marks.
Who is Howard Marks?
He wrote Mr. Nice, a famous book, one of the first ones about marijuana smuggling ever come out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was sleazy.
What do you mean by the sleazy?
Oh, we did some deals, and whenever he knew his time was up, he hired me to haul a load out of Morocco for $2 million, and he turned me in instead of paying me.
Wow. Bastard.
That's a nice word for him. And I escaped from police 3 times, and I still couldn't believe he did it to me. I couldn't believe it.
So you were in Spain, you're still doing deals.
Yeah,
You're still running shit and
I bought a ship. I was hauling hashish.
on a ship now. You're
Yeah.
giving up the planes and you're
Can't
taking
do it.
ships.
Taking ships, yeah. I hauled 20-ton loads out of Pakistan and 20-ton loads out of Thailand.
How did you get? Where did Pakistan come into the picture here?
We just buy hashish there. You go over there in the camels and ride the camels around with the fellas up towards Afghanistan.
So this guy said, "Hey, we got hashish in Pakistan."
Oh, we can do it. If you move it, we can do it. So we did.
And he had all these connections.
He had connections. So
Okay.
a friend, a real nice fellow. They're all dead now, but anyhow, he was a good fellow.
So you bought a ship and you sailed to Pakistan.
Uh-huh.
What was that like?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Just nothing.
The experience wasn't anything.
Not particularly. We was in Malta, and the taxi drivers, they had some guys from North Africa that killed the taxi drivers, and they gouged their eyes out and reached in there to get the little bullet out and throwed them in behind the ship, and they came up all around the taxi drivers did around the stern of the ship. That was the most exciting thing, to have all those policemen all over me.
Jeez. 20 tons of hashish from Pakistan to where?
To Canada.
To Canada.
Uh-huh.
How long did that take?
I don't remember. I really don't.
More than a couple days.
Oh, 6 weeks, something like that, I reckon.
6 weeks.
I didn't do that part of the trip, but I met the trip with a float plane. And then I flew the...
So you didn't stay on the ship the whole way?
No, I took it over there.
Okay.
And then I bought a Cessna 206 on floats from Ketchum and...
On floats. I love the way you say it. It's basically, it just means you could land it on the ocean, right?
Yeah, on the water. And
you could taxi it to the side of the ship?
No, they unloaded it and piled it up. And then I hauled it down across the San Juan Fuga Straits between Canada and the United States, and I landed on a lake in Washington State. And I hauled load after load in that snotty weather. You couldn't see nothing. Just pull the power and come in and land on the lake and hope you didn't hit nothing.
Jeez. That's insane, man. That's just such a crazy story. Just like, it's amazing that you're sitting here alive right now after all that you've been through. Like, it's just like...
Yeah, I almost got killed on the first load of that. I crossed the, it was a moonlight night, full moon, and I'd been to that Lake Osset, I believe is how it's pronounced.
In Washington?
Washington State, just over in the Olympic Mountains, just on the coast. It's a pretty big lake, got some islands in there. It's got a radio station at the end of the lake, and you can make your approach right over that radio station and land on the lake. And so I'm coming, and I think, oh, I'm a little early. I must have a tailwind. It's clear. And I see the lake, and I see a white sand around it. I didn't remember a beach on the lake, but okay, it must be nice. So I pull the power to land. And I get right down almost to land, and I see that it's not a lake. It's a burnt-over area where it's been clear-cut and been set on fire, and it's black like the lake. And I see stags sticking up 10, 15 feet high everywhere, and I'm down in them. And I just pull the power and just go out the jaws of death, just trying to pull that thing straight back out of there. What I didn't realize is that what I thought was a beach was a logging road going around this cut-over area.
Oh, my gosh.
So you can just, sometimes your mind can just fool you, something terrible.
How much are you making when you're starting to run this stuff from Pakistan up to...
We didn't make much.
Canada?
I don't remember how much we paid for it, but we should have made a lot. But it had too much yak fat in it, and it wouldn't stay lit. And I think we found
Too much what?
Yak fat.
Yak fat.
They take the fat from the yak and take the marijuana, the glue or the juice from the marijuana, and rub it with their hands like this till it gets hot, and they make hashish. And if they put the yak fat in it to make it stick together. And if you put too much on it, it won't stay lit on their cigarette.
Oh.
So it just brought the price way down.
So it just wasn't that.
It wasn't.
No more cocaine deals once you went over to Europe?
No, I stayed away from that.
Okay.
So yeah, I did. I did a load of cocaine to Australia, the biggest ever in the history of Australia. I got caught with $400 million worth down there.
When was this? After you moved to Europe?
Yeah.
How did this deal come about, and who are you doing business with? Was it the same guy that you met in Mallorca?
No, we done split now. He done ripped me off real bad.
Okay.
I got to prison. I escaped from the. They arrested me in Spain. I escaped 3 times, and the third time they put me in jail there in Mallorca. And
you were in jail in Mallorca. Wow.
And so in prison in Mallorca. And so they took me to court for extradition. I had double extradition. Germany's asking for my extradition for this hashish. I hired a guy to haul the load. And the United States is asking because I owe them 25 years special parole. And they're asking for that. And they say that they got me for moving several $1 million worth of gold coins that they said they could have, before money laundering. They said he moved these gold coins that the United States government would have seized had they known they belonged to Reeves. That was the indictment.
Wow.
Carried 5 years, and I got 5 years for it. But Germany wanted me because
they just made up some bullshit.
Oh, it's anything to get you to extradite me. So now
because now Barry was gone, they really had nothing else on you, so they just made something up.
So I paid the German captain of my ship $400,000 to haul a load of hashish, and he bought him a long cigar and a long BMW, and the police arrested him. They found the money, and they said, if you'll tell us who it is, you'll be home by Christmas. But they didn't tell him which Christmas. He got 7 years up in Germany. So now they've arrested me in Spain. After I got away from them so much, they handcuffed me this way, like over my hands this way, everywhere I go, and it's very painful if you left that way overnight.
Oh, yeah. I
So
can imagine.
You can't get out of them that way. So let me see. So anyway, they take me to court, and Mari's there and my son, and I'm there for the extradition hearing. And I have 4 guards guarding me. All my paperwork says use maximum restraints. So
Because you had already escaped.
So, and they got my history from Interpol.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting there and I talk to the lawyer. I says, I wonder, I'm above the palm trees. How high is this place? I'm on the 3rd floor.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you'll kill yourself. And I said, well, I'm dead anyway. I've got this thing, 3.5 tons of hashish charge in Germany and 25 years parole in America plus the coins.
Right.
So I bound across, when 2 of them leave to go smoke, I bound across the room and jumped up on the desk of the stenographer, which is 9 months pregnant, and I kicked the window out of the courtroom. And I jump up on the ledge. I'm handcuffed.
Like, not like this.
No, I'm in front of me.
Oh,
now,
you're in front of you.
in
Okay.
court. And so I looked down, and it's an awful, awful long way. I thought there might be some power lines or telephone wires I could grab on the way down and break it, but they wasn't. And there was a car parked a little bit up on it. It looked like it was a station wagon. And I'd worked on the Los Angeles Fire Department, practiced jumping in the net from 4 floors. So I'd bailed out and hit the top of that car, wham. And the roof
What was your strategy when you were falling from the...
I hit right on my heels and my butt, hit right in, and the roof caved in and saved my life. But it went down, it destroyed that car. And the
Like in a sitting position you landed?
yeah,
Okay.
but more on my feet. And
Okay, more on your feet.
And I still have a dead spot in my back from that jump. It gets hot if I get upside of something. I have to get it off.
Oof.
So I mean, it was like Donald Duck. I jumped out of that car and ran. Anyhow, the next day the newspaper said Spider-Man escapes. Anyhow, they caught me and they extradited me up to Germany. And Germany gave me 8 years for using a German citizen in an international crime. They didn't have any hashish or nothing, but because I'd hired a German citizen, and he told, if he'd have kept his mouth shut, there'd been nothing. So I got 8 years up there.
So you spent the next 8 years of your life in Germany in prison?
No, after 1 year, I escaped from Lubeck maximum security prison.
What?
Yeah, I don't think anybody ever escaped. So I went out to the bars and got all cut up real bad and hurt and lost my clothes and got my shoes and.
So this wasn't some sort of like tunneling escape, right?
Oh no! I went through the bars, and got on the roof and went above the guard towers. And then I jumped down on one guard tower by the Sally Port, and bailed over the fence into a pile of dirt, a sand pile, and got away. And a woman was there. I watched her, and it was raining real hard, and I'd lost my clothes, most of them, and I had my blue jeans on, and I watched her and a little boy come, and she brought her husband to the door. And when she went back, I jumped on top of the guard tower, which was 1 floor below me, and the guy went, "Hey!" It was a tin roof. And they're trained to kill you. I mean, they got this thing that moves out there. And then I went across, and I went straight towards her so he couldn't shoot me. And then I went around behind the cars and was running downhill, I mean, striding. And here I heard bam, bam, bam. She's up on the sidewalk knocking the parking meters over, trying to kill me. And I jumped behind some car, and she just, yeah, at me. And the little boy standing in the seat, she tore the fender off of her car on another car trying to get me.
Really?
So I jumped over a fence, and it cut my hands all up. They had glass on top of it, and I had shoes on with $200 that Mari had slipped me in the prison. And my shoes went down. I went almost half my knees in the mud and the blood and cut my chest all up. Oh, man. And so I took off running and lost my shoes and my $200. Now I'm barefooted and just have a pair of blue jeans, no top on. And I get away and get to Holland. Whew.
And you got to Holland. You crossed the border.
Crossed the border. I had a heck of a time.
At what point did you meet up with Mari?
I didn't. She was mad with me. Told me to go back.
Ooh. Ouch. Why was she mad? Because you escaped?
You're destroying my life. What do you mean?
Oh, my gosh.
That police going to be here anytime. I can't get the papers out of the house. What do I do with them?
Right.
Bury them under a rock. I don't care. Go. So I think she was tired of it at that time.
How old were you at this point when you escaped that prison in Germany?
It was 1990, so I was 47 years old.
47 years old. Wow. And what did you do when you got to Holland?
I met up with Mari's cousin, and she had buried $100,000 for me on the place there in case I did get out. And she told me, you go to the linden tree, you go to the haystack, and then you go to the linden tree, and you turn right, and you go 10 steps. But she didn't tell me there's 20 linden trees. So we had fun.
So they were messing with you, huh?
No. I mean, Mari just remembered how she got to where she buried it. So I got an iron rod and I finally found it.
Oh, okay.
And got some money, and then I got me some clothes. I stayed there for a while and got a passport, and I went back to South America. And then I went back to see the Colombians and the people that I knew, and stayed there for a while. And then I got a job to take a boat to Australia with a ton of cocaine on it. So I took a boat down there, and I got caught.
Took a boat from Colombia
No,
to...
I bought the boat in Houma, Louisiana, and I took it to Australia from there.
What kind of boat was it?
It was a oil supply vessel, one that goes out to the oil wells.
Okay.
And when they get old, they can't get insurance on them, so they sold it scrap. But this one, you could eat off the engine room floor.
Oh, really?
Like a museum piece. It was
How long?
beautiful.
How big was it? How long was it?
Like a 100-footer.
100-footer.
Yeah.
And how did you? Where did the cocaine come from?
It came. They loaded me in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, just above the equator.
Oh, really?
A tuna boat came out, an old wooden tuna boat, and came to me in rough weather and throwed it over.
Just they threw it over. They threw it over the deck.
They swarmed over and stole everything they could. They wanted my food, my extra fuel.
Oh, really?
Oh, it was a bunch of savages.
Jesus. And how many people are on your crew on that ship?
3 of us.
Just 3 of you.
It was me by myself, really. I had my brother-in-law with me, and the Colombian that got on him, both of them were seasick and couldn't stand up and didn't know how to do anything. I had to cook and wash the dishes.
Oh my gosh. And how long? So, tell me about this trip from the Caribbean where they loaded up your ship to Australia. What was that like?
Well, that was interesting. I left Houma, Louisiana. I never run the ship before, and I mean it was a learning curve for me. And somebody left the water on down in one of the bathrooms. We only had 600 gallons of fresh water because we'd changed it all to fuel. So we ran out of water before we got to Key West. So I had to go into Key West and get water. And then I took off and went across the tongue of the ocean through the Bahamas, and I went to Senegal. What's the islands off of anyhow, some island 600 miles off of Senegal. And I can't think of the name of them right now. But anyhow, I stayed there a week. The Colombians told me they'd load me there.
Like Barbados?
No, this is what?
Canary?
No, south of the Canaries, about 1,000 miles. I can't think of it. I know it as good as my own name. I know the Praia is the name of the town. It's Senegal.
Okay.
And so I stayed there, and then the Colombians said, no, come back towards Colombia 1,000 miles. What? Because I just got enough money, fuel just barely to make it to Australia. So I have to go back 1,000 miles, and then they're not there, and I have to go 3 or 4 days cruising around up and down below the radar, or the satellites, and finally they show up and throw the stuff on. And then I go down and I go follow the center of the Atlantic Ocean down, because the current goes counterclockwise in the southern oceans, clockwise in the northern oceans. And I went far south of Cape Town and went down about 50 degrees in the Great Southern Ocean near Antarctica, and I came with it. And I woke up one morning and the waves I fished in Alaska, you remember? And
yeah.
These waves was just indescribably tall. It wasn't rough, but they were just mountains.
Giant swells.
Just swells, and they were sharp. I mean, almost straight up and down. And the boat would come, and it would just come up, and it would stop and go, and then the propellers would come out of the water, and there'd be a curl on
surf
top,
down it,
and then surf down it, and the nose would stick in the ground, in the water, it'd come back over. Well, I was real uncomfortable. So I was supposed to go under towards Melbourne, so I got out of it, and I turned north to get out of that sharp latitude, and I went and unloaded I went unloaded up about the middle of the West Australian coast in a real desert area and was arrested there. But I have visions. And 2 weeks before I was arrested, I had a crystal clear vision of me being arrested and how it was and my feelings. They was on my back with the hands and putting the handcuffs on me, and I was in the sand down there, and I was crying, and I was just saying, poor Maury. I knew our life was over together. And it happened exactly like I saw it in that vision. So I turned my ship and went 500 miles from where I was supposed to go, but the snitch was waiting on me, so I didn't have any choice.
Who was the snitch?
A guy named Eduardo, the owner's brother, friend, and he had been working with them from day one, so they knew we were coming from before we left.
God, so your vision of all this happening and everything falling apart came to fruition.
Yes.
So what happened after they arrested you?
Oh, they put us in a bulletproof vans, one of those things like armored trucks, and took us to prison.
Wow. And and you ended up, obviously, so you didn't escape that prison, right? You stayed in Australia.
No, I didn't. I could have one time, and Maury wouldn't send the little money and needed to have some help.
Maury was pissed at you.
She ain't going to help me get out.
Were you guys in communication at all? Did you guys communicate back and forth?
Every day. Australia prisons are so much nicer than American prisons.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, they give you a long time, and it's hard, but they treat you good. The food's good. The officers seem to go to school to have a little more intelligence than just the scumbags that they have
The
here.
officers are way different in here.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I've always thought with all the people that I've talked to that have been in and out of prison, especially on this podcast, is that the people that end up in the United States that end up being prison guards are like the people who couldn't even make it as cops.
They couldn't even make it as security guards. They are some of the lowest life scum on the face of the earth.
And it seems like the people that are the security guards or prison guards in this country, they're not people that are there because that's what they wanted to be. It's because they failed at something else, and they
got a job, and they got a badge, and they got authority, and they just strut.
Right.
Like you woke up, well, you get talked ugly too. They kill people in there. Mm-hmm. They hurt you.
And the prison guards in Australia, was it like they were paid better, they were educated more,
all of that.
Was there like more of like a sense of like a mission to get something done there? Like we gotta.
Oh, it wasn't good, but it was just not. It wasn't such hatred as these fools here have for you. It just didn't have that ring for it. Oh, you had some nasty ones once in a while, but they'd be like 1 out of 20 or 30 might be nasty.
Okay.
But here, you get every other one that's nasty.
Right.
Yeah, a good 50% of them. There's some nice ones here too, but it's rare.
So how many years did you stay in that prison in Australia?
18 years.
18 years. Mm-hmm. And it was the maximum security prison that there is in that country, right?
It's the most secure prison in the Southern Hemisphere.
The most secure prison in the Southern Hemisphere.
What it's known as, yes.
Wow. And what was your experience like there for 18 years?
Well, when I first went in, I'd been in a week or two, and when they got my paperwork that I escaped from 5 different prisons, they came and arrested me right where I was having supper. And they took me to that prison. I was in the Hakia prison. They took me to Casuarina prison. And they put me in a shoe. Mm-hmm. And I was in there for over a year. And
that's it. The shoe is basically just an isolated box just by yourself.
Well, there was 5 of us in this one. Okay. And it was they had room for 12 prisoners in there. And they had it was kind of like the Silence of the Lambs. That was a big cage. Mm-hmm. And they had 6 guards on the other side looking at you through a one-way mirror. Mm. And they come in the morning with, all of them had big clubs, and they opened the door. And they brought food in. We cooked it ourselves. And then they come in at 6 o'clock and locked our doors, and that was it. That's all we had in them. You had you could talk to them through a speaker, mm-hmm. and that was all. It wasn't bad, but it was just like, how long am I going to be in here? And that's when I had I wondered, okay, I've got 25 years in America, and I've escaped from the German prison. I've done this, got life here. I might never see my children or my grandchildren. They might ever know me. I believe I'll write about when my grandma bought me the little horse. And they had a computer room in there.
So you were there for life. You thought you were there for life.
I was hoping I'd get out. I certainly behaved myself. I had to go 18 years before I could ask for parole.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd write it down. Okay, when I got the Mexican Pinto, I'm going to write that story tomorrow. So they had the little computer room there, and I didn't know how to turn the thing on. And it had a thing called Paintbrush. It didn't have a program on it. So I could type. So I could type one line. And then the next day I'd think about when my daddy was robbed in Chattanooga, and I'd write that little story. And then I got where I'd write 2 or 3 of them a day. And in the end of about 3 or 4 months, I had over 1 million words written in one line.
Wow.
So when I got out of the SHU, they gave it to me on disc, and I went and I got out, and they let me buy a computer. They let you buy a computer.
Oh,
that
really?
time. Yeah. It wasn't hooked up to anything, but you could do all the, you could put a lot of programs on it, like encyclopedias and.
Like a laptop or something?
It was a full-on computer.
And where did you keep it?
In your cell.
Really?
Had a cell with a door and a lock to it, and yeah.
Wow.
It was pretty nice. Ain't no lie about it now compared to America. It's quiet and.
No internet, though?
No.
Okay.
Nothing like that. But you had telephones, and it wasn't expensive. I called Mari every day for 20 minutes. So anyway, I took that thing out, and it took me 2 years to straighten out what all I had written and saw what it was all different colors where I'd misspelled and I just put what my thoughts were.
So you went through and edited it, revised it.
I had to write it really because I was just writing my thoughts as fast as I could. Just put them. So that's how I did it. So I took it out, and I got I took 2/3 of it out. So there's only 520 pages.
Mm-hmm.
They'd have been 1,500 pages if I'd put it all in there.
Wow. And you have it published into a book now, which is called, what's it called?
Smuggler.
The Smuggler.
Just Smuggler.
Just Smuggler. No,
Smuggler Roger Reeves, a memoir.
A memoir.
Mm-hmm. And it's on the Amazon best-selling list, and so it's done good.
I enjoyed it. It's fascinating. And you have the audio going to be done soon?
It's already done. I'm just waiting for Amazon
for the approval.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what did you take away from all of this, from this crazy, amazing life that you've had, and after all the time? Well, actually, let's go back, because you were in Australian prison for 18 years, but once you got out of prison there, you went to another prison, right?
Horrible. I was treated something terrible when there was 3 Australian marshals with me. I come back handcuffed because there's a warrant from the United States from parole from 1977, 43 years ago, for possession of marijuana. I got off the airplane laughing and chatting with the Australian guards. I was slammed upside the wall by border patrol. Eyes forward, kicking my legs apart, putting handcuffs on me so hard they cut the blood off, leg irons forward. And they walked me about 100 yards, turned me over to the marshals. The marshals took some of the leg irons and stuff off, chained me to the wall, and left me there all day. Then they took me to the Metropolitan Detention Center.
On Con Air?
No, I was just in a van. There was in Los Angeles. They took me to Metropolitan Detention Center in Los Angeles and put me into isolation. I said, what in the world am I in isolation for? Done nothing. And I was there 3 or 4 days, and I talked to the lieutenant when he come by in the morning. He said, nothing I can do for you, Reeves. So there's a guy came there, and he was in a suit, nice-looking fellow. He opened it up. He said, hello, Reeves. I just want to see what you look like. My name is Associates Warden Short, and I saw your National Geographic documentary of me, and it does me pleasure to keep you in isolation. And he shut the little Judas window, and that's the last I saw. I never could get out of there. So I stayed in 9 months without a hearing, which the parole board has to give you one within 3 months. They never did give me one. I paid a lawyer $7,500. His name was Cannon, up in San Francisco. He never once made a phone call, never somebody got to him. What was his name, Marty? Christopher Cannon.
Christopher
Cannon, the lawyer in San Francisco that the parole board said, don't touch it. And he stole my $7,500 and never made one phone call.
That bastard.
I mean, thoroughbred.
Yeah. Wow.
So
and what was the documentary he was talking about?
National Geographic come down to Australia, and they did one on me called Australia's Hardest Prison. And they did one. I got some some action in that one.
Because I was looking for that online. I couldn't find it. I saw something on History Channel.
They take it off after a while. I understand National Geographic does, and then they put it back on. It was real big at one time.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause I remember searching for it, and I couldn't find it.
I got a copy of it.
Okay.
I got several copies of it. I can send one if I want it.
So how long did you end up staying in Los Angeles Metropolitan?
They sent me on Con Air to Oklahoma. And there I got put on the floor, but I had to report to the officer every 2 hours or they was going to go back in the shoe. So yeah, I couldn't believe it. And I just saw the corruption of the Con Air and whatever congressman or senator owns that. I met people,
explain that. That's
I
interesting.
met people from Waycross, Georgia, Albany, Georgia, Jacksonville, Florida, and they got caught with 2 grams of something, 3 grams, 5 grams. They facing 5 years, and they mentally probably a little problems with mental. A lot of prisoners do. Mm-hmm. And they were being sent to Los Angeles for psychiatric evaluation. And it takes about 3 months to go and a month or 2 to come back. And they stay in Oklahoma, and they go from one place to another on Con Air until they finally get to some doctor in Los Angeles that says that they have a problem or not. And then I met the ones from Los Angeles and San Francisco, and they were going to Atlanta, Georgia to have psychiatric evaluation.
So no matter where you got busted for these small-time drug offenses, they would find a psychic or a psychiatric psychologist on the opposite end of the country.
So they could shuffle you back and forth.
So they had a reason to fly Con Air all
right.
around the country.
It's just blatant ripping off the government. That's as bad as I've ever seen.
Who owns Con Air? Is Con Air?
I don't think you better ask. I might be back in prison.
That's interesting. Who can you find out maybe on Google like who owns Con Air? You would think that would just be part of the BOP, right?
No, it's somebody owns it. The other BOP wouldn't be doing that.
How many airplanes do they have?
I saw 3 big jets.
There's 3 jets.
And then they got a lot of. That's all I know. But that tower in Oklahoma, which is center, has got 1,800 rooms, and those planes are landing and coming in there day and night. It's just like Grand Central Station of federal prisoners.
Wow.
Why are they moving them like that? I don't know. Somebody's making big, big money.
Whoa. That is kind of wild. I had no idea about that.
Yeah.
He's trying to inch it over. You just double click the top, yeah.
It probably won't tell you the truth.
Fleet size 59, parent company Con Air Group Inc. Headquarters Abbotsford, British Columbia, Canada. They have 59 planes, Con Air Group Inc. So it's a corporation.
Yep.
Whoa.
They own some politicians, I guarantee you that.
Oh, yeah. They're, wow, man. Wow, that's... What a world we live in, Roger.
What a world we live in, I'm telling you.
That is incredible. Incredibly corrupt.
Yes. The whole system is.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you about the drug war. Today, I'm not talking about, but a policeman gets a job here or in any town. There's 10 or 15 of them going this year. And one of them, he's a go-getter. And he lets his hair grow, and he gets some tattoos and some dirty clothes, and he goes under the bridge, and he gets one of those poor mentally ill people, bums, hobos, and they sell 2 or 3 or 5 grams to their neighbor over there, and he arrests both of them federally. Now he's got 2, and next month he does it, and he's got 2 more. At the end of the year, he's got 15 or 20 major drug busts.
Mm-hmm.
And he does that for 2 or 3 years. And the other fellow, he's at a desk somewhere, and this guy made captain.
This guy's a captain, the guy at the desk?
The one that makes all these little tiny busts, all these insignificant nothing. He's just putting poor people in prison.
Right.
Now he's captain. Now he's lieutenant. Now he's captain. Now he goes up the ladder rocket. Now, the prosecutor, the one that can say, I got him, he has 2 grams of methamphetamine, 2 grams, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he has 5, give him 5 years in prison. No matter about his poor wife and children crying, put him in prison. We need fodder for these private prisons and for the federal system. Oh boy, we got him. And if I'm a prosecutor and I get enough convictions, I got a 98% conviction rate, I'm going to make judge. And I'll never lose my job at $500,000 a year.
It's all about climbing the ladder.
Yes, climbing the ladder and making money.
Wow.
And
Yeah, that
that's
system.
exactly how it works.
That judicial system is just so corrupt. Are you familiar with the story of Ross Ulbricht?
No.
He was a kid. He was in his early 30s when he got busted. And he got like 2 life sentences for. He started this website. It's like it's called Silk Road. It was basically like this dark web place where people can go buy any kind of drugs they want. So it was like an online marketplace for people to buy anything they want, as long as it didn't, like, the only rules were you can't harm people, or you can't order people to get murdered, or there's no human trafficking allowed. But it was mainly used for drugs. So you could buy any kind of drugs that you wanted online, and it was kept anonymous. Like all the buyers and sellers were protected because they used this form of currency called Bitcoin, which is a cryptocurrency, and you can easily keep the people making the transactions anonymous. And he was just created a website basically that anyone could go on there and make a transaction, and he took a small fee. And he ended up getting 2 life sentences because he didn't take the deal. They obviously offered him a really big plea deal, and he didn't take it because they thought he could beat it. And there was a bunch of corrupt agents involved in his case, and the kid got basically, he got double the sentence that El Chapo got. And he was just some 20-year-old kid that made a website, an e-commerce website. That story really hit home for me as far as exposing, like, the real issues of the judicial system in this country. And they made a documentary about it, and it's just disgusting. It's
sick.
It's disgusting.
It's vomiting sick on the floor. I mean, here I am. I served 33 years, mostly for marijuana. And I walk out in big billboards, relax, we deliver your marijuana to your house. It's just like in the Prohibition. Those guys got 12 years in Alcatraz for making whiskey. They when they got out and the law was passed the next year, yes, but you broke the law then. So
Right.
you got to stay. And after 12 years, they walk out of Alcatraz and walk across the street and get them a drink out of the bar.
Right.
That's the same thing's happening
It's
now.
insane, man.
It's stupid. I mean, President Jimmy Carter had it all. Most of the prison, a great portion of the prison, is from mentally incapacitated, or people that are somewhat have some problems. They had problems from probably their early childhood. They were unwanted, unloved, orphanage, foster home, beaten, abused, men and women, and they come to prisons, and they treat other people that way. We need help for these people. It's a health issue. It's a social issue. It's an issue that the society owes to the people that we have here.
Is there any country that's doing it right? Like, obviously, we're doing it worse than anybody. We have more people locked up per capita than any other country in the world, right? Is there anybody who's doing this right? Is there anything we could take from another country and learn from them?
I understand that Portugal.
What's that?
My country, Holland.
Oh, Holland.
Holland. Absolutely. Holland's great at it. And
Didn't Holland legalize like heroin or something?
I don't know exactly what they've done.
Where
but
you can go. I heard that if you're addicted to heroin, or if you want to use heroin, you can actually go to a doctor and they'll give you like a clean needle, and they'll give you like a small.
Oh yes, that's been a long time there. And even Birmingham, England does it. And they got proof. Listen, the people clean up, the prostitutes clean up, the people get a job. But America goes into Birmingham and says, you can't do that. You can't set a precedent like this. We must have our prisons full. So they fight so hard, the American judicial system, the DEA. They want this stuff to go on. It's wrong. I mean, it's wrong in the eyes of man and God. It's just wrong. They take these people and take them away from their children, their families, and they take their homes. I mean, they worked for forever. They inherited from their grandmother. You better believe if there's some money in it, they're there to get it. So it's just wrong.
Do you think it'll ever change? What do you think? There's a
Of course, it's going to change. It can't be. It's already swung hard the other way now. It's just
How
got
so?
to. It's just. Like
what's the answer? Like what sort of steps do you think we're gonna have to take to
make this be a health issue? If a guy's got a heroin addict, let's just say heroin addict, they know right now that this kratom, if they will take those tablets, they have no withdrawal whatsoever. But the Federal Drug Administration,
kratom?
kratom,
Yeah.
I couldn't take.
Yeah.
They fight it hard. They don't want it.
Right.
It's
no.
just like the marijuana oil, relieving
Yeah.
all these pains. They don't want it. They fight it hard, and they pay their politicians.
Right.
They got lobbyists walking the halls of Congress. You get trips, and you get money, and you can do anything for you.
We got big pharmaceutical companies that produce pills. We got OxyContin. We got Vicodin. You got to go to the doctor and get a prescription to some opiates.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Yeah,
Not this unregulated stuff.
Exactly. So but it's coming to light. It's slowly coming to light. This is wrong.
It is. It's terrifying. And then another thing is parenting. I feel like parenting is so important. And a lot of the people that end up in prisons, a lot of people that end up in the streets, homeless, addicted to drugs, it seems like the catalyst, the one thing, the one common denominator across all these people is messed up childhoods and
Absolutely.
and parents that weren't prepared for children.
My mantra is that a couple should have a permit before they have a baby. That might be mean, but a little sparrow builds her nest before she lays an egg.
The problem is you can't stop them from having babies, though, right?
You can't stop them, but you have to have a permit to ride a moped on the streets of America.
Right.
How much more important it is to bring a child into it. My daughter, who's a doctor, she delivered a baby to an 11-year-old child.
Your daughter delivered a baby
From 11-year-old child. 4 generations in the waiting room, all on welfare.
Wow.
12, 14 young'uns.
That's the problem is even if you put in a law like that, people are still going to breed. People are still going to have babies.
I don't say they wouldn't, but I'm just saying that's the answer to it, to educate people or to encourage people to have a mother and a father, have a home, have a living, you get babies we want instead of babies that we just going to get for the welfare check. That's awful. To encourage the wrong people to have babies.
It is.
Should encourage the right people to have babies.
I don't know the answers, Roger.
I don't think we have them, but anyhow, that's the question now. Now gets the answer.
It is the question. It's a very hard question.
How are you going to stop this?
It's a very dicey subject, and it's. I don't know what the answer is, but yeah, I totally agree that having a child is definitely one of the most important, serious decisions that you could possibly make. I mean, you're creating another life. I mean, that is going to set up, depending on how you raise that small baby child, depending on how conscientious you are, how prepared you are, how willing you are to be committed to doing that. I mean, that's going to send that human being into a spiral one way or the other, whether it be good or bad. And the effects, the consequences, the repercussions of it going wrong, of it going the bad way, are exponential. So it's just, I don't know the answers. It's definitely a dicey topic because you can't take away people's human rights to reproduce, but at the same time, it's the logic is obviously there. Like, you can't just have people reproducing just because there's a financial gain or just for the hell of it. Let's have a kid and then, it's on its own.
Exactly. I don't know what to say about it, but there is an answer. I know that if the government would take this as a health issue, and part of it is being family planning, and spend 1/10 of the money that they did on eradicating the marijuana from the country,
Right.
what a world we would live in.
Right. It's all about money, right? It's all about money allocation.
Schools and teach these children, tell them, educate them.
Education is huge, right?
What was it? Victor Hugo says, no, it wasn't his. close a school, open a prison.
Right.
So,
yeah. Because, I mean, there's so many stories of people who had abusive childhoods, who had parents that weren't there. They were neglected all their lives. There's so many stories of like the biggest success stories. They're people that had messed up childhoods,
Yes.
right? And
But it shouldn't be.
obviously it's rare. It's rare. Not all kids that have messed up childhoods end up successful. But if they had the access, like if they, I think it puts on, like if you come up from an early stage in your life with lots of obstacles in your way, and you're able to overcome a lot, and you have to deal with this. You have a very difficult life. It puts something in you, I think, that it makes you hungry, right? So I think if those people are hungry and they have access to get educated or to go learn or say, hey, it's not going to cost me, I have to go out and figure out a way to make $100 this week. Am I either going to spend my $100 on food or drugs, or am I going to spend my $100 on getting an education? They're obviously going to choose survival over education. So, but if those kids had access to some sort of a free education, and we took care of people who didn't have money, who actually wanted to learn and wanted to get better, that would be better for society, right? Because we would have, in the country, we would have less losers. We would have less people that are just leeching off the system. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but also
because you want to have people that are educated. You don't want to have that's the goal. Like in our community as a country, like you want to take care of. We want to think of the country as one community.
Yes.
As unfortunate as it is, we think of people as right and left, Democrat, Republican, whatever. We want it so polarized. If we thought about it as one community, and we want to educate our community to make it better, you want people to have the access to the education to get better.
I'll tell you what, for a son, maybe a daughter too, if they had a father to put their arm around him and say, son, you should study this or you should do this, I encourage you to do that. That needs that in addition to the choice of where you're going to do that or another. You need good parents to make recommendations. And also, you shouldn't put such high standards for college and that sort of stuff to everybody.
Right.
They should put, you know by 7th grade or 8th grade whether a child's going to be certain university material or not. Start them in trade school.
Right.
And our prison system should be only trade schools.
Yeah.
You get a young thief comes in there and the judge says, they give him a rung. Said, okay, you could be an electrician. We need electricians. We need plumbers. We need okay. Your sentence is to become an electrician. When you get a Class A license to be an electrician, you walk out the door. Boy, you'd see them straighten up and stop taking the drugs and
right, and that way when they get out, they actually have a path.
you go to work, $30, $50 an hour, whatever. And, it's not fair to the people out there, but if they do a crime, why just set them there just in a cell?
Right.
You can have one teacher to 20, 30 guys.
Mm-hmm.
And when they pass the test and they can do it, let them loose. That's their sentence. And we'd have workers.
And the hardest thing also about the whole prison system is that, I've talked about this before, but once you're in the system, it's almost like even once you're out, once you get released, it's almost like you have those shackles on you for life, because there's things like probation, there's things like restitution. You're always checking in. There's only certain things you can do, certain things you can't do. If you do accidentally slip up once,
Bam,
you're
back in.
done.
I had 30 years of that. They give me 25 years special parole. Anytime you violate it, you can serve all or part. And on top of that, sir, I'm giving you 5,000 hours community service. You can do it shoveling horse shit in a zoo. And on top of that, you're going to pay all the cost of prosecution. And on top of that, I'm giving you 30 years for this, 5 more years for that. It's just ridiculous.
What year did you get out?
I got out last year.
Last year you got out.
About 14 months right now.
Wow, man. Wow.
I stayed in another 9 months. It was harder than the 18 years in Australia in isolation here for a parole violation from 1977 for possession of marijuana, that somebody was after me. They wouldn't let the lawyer talk, and they wouldn't let me out of isolation.
So what happened after you were in that 9 months isolation in Los Angeles?
They let me out, and I went home. And
You were a free man.
No, I was on parole, and I didn't know how long I'd be on parole.
But you were at least you were
I
able
was
to go
home
home.
with my wife, and the COVID was out, and the parole officers didn't come, and so after a year, they said, "We dropped the parole. You're free." I got my passport. I got my driver's license. I got my pilot's license.
Wow.
I'm ready to go.
Wow, man. What an incredible, fascinating story.
So I went back and got my pilot's license and went down and rented a plane for a day. I had a good time.
So what's your goals now? What's next for Roger Reeves? What's next what's the next chapter for you?
I just don't know what's going to. I'm going to take it one day at a time. I'm just happy to be home with Mari.
No more plane loads of marijuana.
No, that's over. They got over the horizon radar.
Oh, that's incredible. You and your wife, the bond that you guys were able to form, and the way you guys were able to stay together for that long period of time, even though you were gone for 33 years, is just so amazing.
I never heard of it.
I've never heard of it. I've never heard of that. I mean, it's rare you hear of that with people that didn't go to prison.
Yeah.
Let alone did have to be isolated for 33 years.
It's just unbelievable she waited that long.
What is the key? What's the secret? What's the secret? Tell me the secret.
Well, she's a Christian person. She's lovely. I mean, she's just like too good for this earth. I said, "What did you tell him, Mari? You're a beautiful woman." She said, "I told him I'm not available," and said that worked.
Yeah.
So bless her heart. It waited on me all that time. I tell you, when I came home, there was the same table, a round oak table that I had sanded in, and there was the same placemats that I had left 35 years ago, last thing. There was the same silverware and the same plates. I just sat there and cried. Just like, it took me 3 days. I couldn't even look at pictures of her when she was 40 and when she was 50 and when she was 60. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
So it was.
How did it make you feel?
Made me feel sick. Still, I don't like to look at the pictures. And I was gone that many years. Half of my life, I was in those prison cells. It just was. Maybe I broke the law and I'm an outlaw, but I'm not much of a criminal. I don't hurt nobody. I'm for good in this world. Just got caught up in this and did it.
Yeah. And there were so many people like you too that got caught up in that part of history.
You can pull up to almost any port in the world and you just say Rio and say, "I'm going to pay all of you $1 million to haul this load of cocaine. We might get caught." You could sink the ship with young men and women to get on it.
So true, man.
It would.
It's so true. Well, Roger, I think we did it. I think we covered pretty much everything. Is there anything that we missed that's important that we left out? I can't thank you enough for coming down.
Mari's got a question about baby deer in Alaska.
A baby deer in Alaska. Mari wants to bring up a baby deer. What happened with the baby deer in Alaska? We can wrap it up with that story.
Oh, that's just a whole other story in itself. We went to.
It might
Might not fit right in now.
It's okay. We can still tell it.
All right, I'll tell
Let's
the
tell
story
it.
about the baby deer in
Let's
Alaska.
we're going to wrap it up with the baby deer story.
All right. Mari and I went to Alaska in 1972 and bought a salmon trawler.
Mm-hmm.
It was an old sailboat. It was a Bristol Day gill netter, and somebody put a little gasoline engine in it, I think 38 feet. And we went salmon fishing with our little daughter, 5 years old. And we catch those great king salmon, put them in the ice, and we come into Goddard Hot Springs and anchor the boat in the evening sometimes and go for the hot spring and shower. Oh, it was nice, and the sharks would cut the salmon in two on the way up sometimes, and we'd hang the head up and get several steaks behind it. And then one day a little boy was crying on the radio that his boat was on fire, that he'd blown up, and his daddy's legs was crooked, and blood was coming out of his ears, and help, help, help. And so pretty soon the Coast Guard was flying, and I said, "What's wrong where I was here?" And so they told us to be watching for an overturned boat or burned boat.
Yeah.
And I had the little boys' cries on my mind all day. And I was cleaning salmon back on the back. And I turned and looked, and there was a bow of a boat coming up. I was almost to hit it. So I ran up out of the fish hole and knocked the boat out of gear. And then I saw my mistake. It was not an overturned boat. It was a giant blue whale that was surfacing under my boat. And he blew his stuff all over me. I could have gaffed him from where I was. That thing was huge. Anyway, I had 4 cables out in there, 6,000-pound test each, and he wrapped himself in those things, or they got around him, and he went down. And that back of that boat went backwards faster, like a cork going backwards faster than it ever went forward.
Jeez.
They took all the gear off, and all the stuff just bent down. My lifeboat and all that just splintered. So we was out of business. So we said, let's take a vacation. So we did all of Southeast Alaska, just putting from one place to the other. And we'd go into some of these bays that was just very seldom visited. And we were looking for glass balls. The Orientals used to have glass blowers on their boats. And they didn't have corks, so they would put these glass balls, some of them that big, some this big, most of them about that big. And they would put floaters on the nets, and in the storms and the rot, and they lost a lot of them in the Pacific Ocean is 70 million square miles, and those things are drifting round and round out there. And in the storms of Alaska in the wintertime, some of them get caught up behind the brush on the beaches. Mm-hmm. So Mari would walk one way, and I'd walk the other. There's always a bunch of bears, and I'd take a .44, and she'd take the rifle, and we walked different places looking for those glass balls. And I came up to a big granite boulder at the end, and a doe ran out. And behind her was a grizzly. And the grizzly, she turned around because she was kind of caught, and he knocked her down in the surf. And I just thought, oh, you rascal. And I took my pistol and shot a bow. And he stopped and looked at me, and then he looked and he loped on off.
You shot the grizzly bear?
No, I just shot in the air.
Shot at him?
Just shot in the air. Just loud, get out of here.
Right.
So I walked on up there, and there was a doe laying there, and the little waves lapping up. And I looked, I saw why she was giving birth, and the little nose was sticking out.
Oh, no.
So I drug her out on the beach, and I took out a razor-sharp salmon knife with a spoon on the back, and I cut her open and took the little fawn out. I dried him off and put it down my coat sleeve. I had a red and white plaid coat.
How big was he?
He was about big as a cat. And long legs, though. And I put him down my coat sleeve, and I went down, Mari, what did you shoot? I said, I shot a grizzly. And she laughed. I said, put your hand down here. I'm not about to put my hand down your sleeve. Anyway, she did, and the little deer was just beautiful. And we took him and put him on the boat, in a box on the boat, but he wouldn't eat anything and wouldn't drink any milk. So we said, well, he's going to die. Well, we had left our daughter a couple of days with some friends in Sitka, Alaska, and we went back, and she met us down at the beach, on the dock. And when she saw the little deer, she held him. She was 5 years old, and he took her by the ear and started sucking, just like it was his mama. Mm-hmm. So we got a little baby doll bottle and put some milk in it, put it behind it, and it was running all down her ear and the milk, and he got to it. So we filled him up on milk. Anyway, we took him on, we had to put burlap on the boat so he could walk around. And we raised him for the next month or so that we was on the boat and going on vacation. And so when we got ready to go back, I was still on the fire department in Los Angeles. I'd taken a leave of absence. We had to go back. And what we do, we named him Flag after the little flag on his tail after Marjorie Walton's book, The Yearling. Mm-hmm. And so I bought a big shopping bag with a zipper, and I put Flag inside. Now then, he's about knee-high, and he's rather spunky. So Mari has 2 bottles, and I put him on, walked on the plane, and put him in the seat, under the seat, my feet over him. And halfway down to Seattle, he gets to crying for his bottle. So the stewardess comes by, and Mari said, would you heat these, please? And she said, where's the baby? So I said, shall we show her? And he said, yes. So we zipped it up, and Flag popped his head up. And, all of them had to come look at him.
That's so
Captain,
funny.
He says, I've smuggled everything on my plane, but never over here. Well, you let my wife see this when he gets. So we did. So we took him on to Redondo Beach with us, and he got too big. He got where he could just jump 6 or 8 feet high, and we was afraid he'd hurt our little girl. So we gave him some people up in Apple Valley that had a horse ranch. Mm. And he stayed up there, and we went to visit him. He had a huge rack of antlers on him. and an unusual deer because none in California like that. So we got a call one day, and they said some dog scared Flag, and he jumped that 8-foot fence and he got away. We said, all right. So the next year we saw an article in the newspaper that a strange deer, and they had picture of Flag, was nuzzling some tourists in Angeles National Park. And they took him, and the rangers took him, and they took him to Santa Claus Village, where he spent the rest of his life in a petting zoo.
Oh my God. One of Santa's reindeer.
Yeah.
Wow, what a story that is.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Roger, thank you again.
Thank you, Dan.
I appreciate you doing this. Tell
my
people
pleasure.
listening and watching where they can find your book.
Find it on Amazon or Kindle.
Smuggler by Roger Reeves.
That's right.
And I'll put a link in the show notes below.
Okay, good. It's been a real pleasure. Thank
My
you.
pleasure too, Roger.
All right.